So I'm going to kick us off with a little bit of what we're doing this afternoon. We're focusing on ideas that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to explain equity just a teensy little bit. And the folks that are going to be up here later this afternoon during the actual diversity, equity, and inclusion bit, they can share an alternate definition if they choose. But the way I think about equity in relationship to equality, start with equality. Let's say you might have seen traveling the internet, there's this drawing of 3 different sized people, and they would all like to see over the fence. And if they have no support, the tallest can see over the fence. The medium person might be able to stand on their tippy toes and see over the fence, and the shorter person is not seeing over the fence. Equality would look like potentially giving everybody something to stand on that is exactly the same height, which may make our tall person now too tall and unstable. Our medium person might be okay, and our short person still might not be able to see over the fence, depending on how tall we make those boxes, right? But if we give the short person a box that actually lifts them to a comfortable and safe height, and we give the medium person a box that lifts them a different amount from the ground, but relative to their person, and now they can safely and comfortably see over the fence. And maybe the tall person doesn't even need a box. That's equity. When we consider the needs of the individual and we adjust to the individual, instead of insisting that everybody must be the same so that it can be fair and equal. I didn't understand my neurodivergent identity. I am autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, dyscalculic, and dyspraxic. Did not understand any of that other than dyslexia, which I found out at 15, until I was 50. So I have a very large life experience of living as me, not understanding me. Our first panel this afternoon is going to be education, and we've got K-12 folks, we've got higher ed folks, and we're going to be talking about what it is to journey through all of those systems as a neurodivergent individual, and as the parent of such, as the faculty who assist, and the people who plan to make accommodations. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience coming up through school. One of my earliest school memories is kindergarten, and this one's vivid. Everyone was playing, and I was standing near the door, observing. And I saw the little kids over here that were in active play, and I saw the kids here that were reading books, and I saw the kids back there that were building things, and I saw the kids here who were playing with the toy kitchen stuff. And I thought, wow, I want to do all of that. But yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that, I tried that one, that one, that one, that one, and I failed at all of them. I tried. I went in. I sat where people were sitting. I stood where people were standing. I played with the same things others were playing with, and they all told me I was doing it wrong. Go away. So here I am on this day, standing by the door at free playtime. And I look at the teacher, and my brain says to me, you know, adults like it when you're helpful. I bet you could go be helpful, and then you'd find a place where you belong. And it worked. I went to the teacher and I said, hi. 5 years old. I was probably really freaking cute, right? Hi. I don't want to do any of those things. Lie. I don't want to do any of those things. May I please help you? Sure. And every day she would give me something to do at playtime. And I learned that's what I do. I stick with adults. I help people. I don't do any of that. And that has followed me all the way through my life. I didn't understand that when I tried to go to the school dance or I tried to go to the friend's party and I had, you know, those turkeys with the pop-up timers, right? You put it in the oven and you know it's done because it's got a thing that goes like this, right? I refer to myself as having a pop-up timer. It's about 10 minutes. I'm with a bunch of people. I'm still that 5-year-old standing at the door. I don't know how to participate in all of that. And my anxiety starts climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And I'm gone in 10 minutes. If I don't feel allowed to leave, that's a whole other world of hurt. If I have to stay in an environment where my anxiety is climbing, and we know society, I'm not allowed to start doing the stuff that would make me feel better. I'm not allowed to start wandering around and acting like this. This is the stuff that might make me feel better. I'm not allowed to walk up to a group of people and start talking to them incessantly about my last favorite thing that I've been researching for, 36 hours straight. I'm not allowed to be me in social environments. So I have to mask. And I have learned masking brilliantly. If I'm masking, people might know I'm a little odd because I'm a lot, right? But they don't think autism. They definitely don't think ADHD. My dyslexia was discovered when one of my teachers said, "Dawn Marie, how can somebody so smart be so stupid?" I don't know how to answer that question. To go from childhood into adulthood, whether you know your neurodivergent identity or you do not, comes with some stuff. It's just not very much fun. We heard from parents this morning some of the heartbreaking things that happen when you watch your child go through that experience, where they're not welcome, where they're not understood, where they're not provided for, and where they're told, "You're just not right." Where parents are told, "Fix your kid. Get them to school. Make them do their homework. Punish them if they do not." I can tell you, as a child growing up, punishment had nothing to do with what motivated me to be a quote unquote good kid. It was demotivating. It took my will to be away. When I felt I couldn't live up to the standards, I didn't feel I belonged in this realm of existence. And as a teenager, I considered leaving it often. A lot of not happy things happened to me while I was growing up. People outside of my family hurt me in some pretty spectacular ways. And because I didn't understand my autism, and neither did anybody else, nobody understood how I ended up in those situations over and over and over again. It led me into an adult life where I married into an abusive situation because When you're not quite sure how the world works and you are doing your darndest to figure it out, and somebody comes into your life who has a big personality and seems really intelligent and seems like they have it together, they can tell you who you are and who you must be, no matter how bad it is. And you believe them. Right. I've had a whole life of everybody telling me I don't belong. I've had a whole life of people telling me I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I can't, I can't, I can't. So of course, this person who's obviously smarter than me and better than me can tell me who I am and how to be. And I did that for 26 years and dragged 3 children through it. And it wasn't until my middle child came to me and said, "Mommy, Daddy's got to go," that I woke up to the idea that actually, no, it's not okay that we all get treated this way. One of the reasons why we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion is because when we don't acknowledge the unique humanity of each individual on the planet and make room for them, significant harm comes into a life. And depending on who you are, significant harm can come in what appears to others as very tiny packages. Seriously, you can't make it to work on time? You've been late 15 minutes every single day since we hired you. You really can't work that out? You're fired. Do you know what happens to a person who can't connect to the clock? Home insecurity, food insecurity, loss of personal connection, inability to get accurate and compassionate healthcare. That seemingly insignificant, "you're always late," can turn into exceptional hardship. And we always tell the person, "Fix yourself. You fix you. I'm not helping you. You're an adult. Be an adult. Act like an adult." We need to start seeing our fellow human beings in their worst moments and in their best moments as legitimately doing the best they can. I am always legitimately doing the best I can. And I screw up 40 times a day. I was up late last night because of the way I chose to send out the virtual program emails, Google decided was spam. And I was answering emails all night. "I'm so sorry you didn't get your program," right? There's stuff that I either don't know, can't do, or I'm trying, but it just doesn't go right. And the world's sense of entitlement to take my agency and create yuck from it. You're wrong, you're bad, you're stupid, you're inappropriate, you're too dramatic, you're too something, you're not enough of something. To take me as a human being and tell me, "You're not right. Fix yourself or leave." I'm not willing to do that anymore. Thank you. I'm not willing to do that anymore. Thank you for the support. I'm not willing to do that anymore. However, I have rejection sensitive dysphoria. If you're not familiar with that, what that is, my brain takes even the tiniest little, "You think you might do that a little differently," and turns it into, "You are a horrible human, go sit in the closet and cry." So even though I'm not willing to take it anymore, sometimes I end up in those situations And I have no words. I can't stand up for myself. I can't advocate for myself. I can do this all day long. But put me in a situation that might feel like I've done something I shouldn't have done. And my brain short circuits in the most spectacular way. And if it goes all the way to meltdown, you can be the person I trust the most in the world, and I will back up like you're trying to murder me. I will act like I'm terrified of you, and I will start hitting myself in the head, and I will be absolutely sure this world isn't made for me. When we're talking about the neurodivergent community, we're talking about people who can appear like I appear now. Well, Dawn Marie, you've got your stuff together. Look at you. You put on a conference. You can talk in front of people. You write. You coach. You have meltdowns like that? Yeah, I do. You can get so confused in a situation that your intellect leaves your brain. Yep. You can go looking for your keys in your purse, not find them, and that can be the possible instigator for a meltdown. Yep. Object constancy. That's what that one is. So when we talk about equity, one of the things we're talking about is what you see on the outside is not always the capacity, the capability, or the strength of the person inside. And just because I can do it myself, do I have to? Just because I can, regardless of the harm it may cause me, do I have to? Well, there are people who need it more than you. That is very true. I am not trying to take theirs. I want them to have more. I would just like them to have more in a way that lifts me at the same time. So as we think together, we're going to hear some stuff this afternoon from people who may or may not share the same opinions. Fantastic. Open your heart, open your mind, listen to things you may not agree with and think, okay, I don't agree with that, but how could I use what they think productively? How could I join what they think cooperatively? I don't have to change how I think. But if we are going to do better for this community, we have to be a unified force. We have to make room for differing opinions, differing language, differing modes of operation. There are ways to do it wrong. There are. But different is not wrong. I am very different, and I am not wrong. Thank you. So we've got a couple of folks we're going to hear from. First, we are very blessed to have the pastor of this church, Union Center Christian Church, who has so graciously donated this space to us today. I know you've got just a couple of words. I'm going to grab this mic. Is this okay? Okay. And I'm going to hand that to you. And you're going to tell them your name because I forgot to write it down.
Hello, my name is Nate. I am the pastor here at Union Center, and I am just so thrilled that we get to host this conference. It is really, I feel like, such a even representation of so many of the foundational things to the Christian faith. And so we are honored to host this here. We believe, even as you're sharing, Dawn Marie, we believe that every human being is made in the image of God. It's one of the foundational things to our faith. And so just the the very worth and dignity that means every person is created with. We just love that this conference is uplifting that in people and giving us different tools to help see others in such a light with dignity and with worth and value. So that's one of the foundational things of our faith. One of the other foundational things of our faith is that we believe that Jesus came into our world. He didn't ask us to come into his world, which is really interesting because we believe that he literally incarnated himself. He put on flesh and walked among us. And so I also love that one of the things that we are talking about here in this space is what it looks like for us to enter into the worlds of other people. And so I love that we get to host this conference and that you feel like this is a safe space to come into, because we truly do believe that the things that you are learning here, the things that you are hearing, very much so represent some of the foundational things to our faith. So we welcome you. We thank you, Dawn Marie. I'm so glad that we can host this conference along with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next on our list, we're going to hear again quickly from ICDL. From ICDL, on camera you couldn't see her. She was miming that she was going to be brief in her comments. But I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you.
So I'm Jackie Bartell. I am a retired special education teacher, and I'm here representing ICDL, which is the International Council on Development and Learning. And we are really, really excited to be sponsoring this conference. It so aligns with the floor time and the DIR model that talks about everybody belongs, everybody is a part of this world, and we have a responsibility to reach people where they are and not ask them to meet us in some pre-described place. And so we're really thankful to be part of this and to be embracing this concept of neurodiversity and learning more about how can we do a better job in this world to embrace everyone, make it a world that everybody belongs in.
And you have a room. Tell them
And we
about-
have a room. Oh yes, I forgot about that. Room 104. My sidekick Colette is in there, showing and not demonstrating, but looking at videos and reviewing videos and having conversations and having a really open space for people to ask questions, people to wonder with us, and to kind of learn more about our model. We have a table in front too if you want more information about learning more about it, training, all of those pieces. We are here to support you. And someone's going to be talking about floor time in schools at 3 o'clock in room 104 as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. It doesn't help if the stick is on the wrong side. No, I was falling over. That wasn't your fault. ICDL has been a wonderful support to today, but also I highly encourage everybody to take a second and find out a little bit more about ICDL and DIR floor time. It really is a person-centered, identity-centered organization for all disabilities and neurodivergencies. So thank you. Next, Ron Crawford from Unleash Potential. I can't say enough wonderful about the sport that Ron and his crew has been. I'm going to let you do some talking, but yeah, you didn't. I had to give him a big hug when he showed up today, because there's a lot of the social media that if you've been on our Facebook page, Lindsay has been doing. She was going to be here today, but was needed elsewhere. Lindsay has been doing. Ron's organization has just been a tremendous support, so we're really grateful.
Thank you, Dawn Marie. Yeah, all the credit for that goes to my daughter. Unleash Potential is a leadership development company. Really what we focus on is trying to change the perspective of leadership. We are not management consultants. We are not an organization that tries to focus on how do we make organizations more effective, how do we make them more lean, how do we make them more profitable. We focus on how do we make them more empathetic. How do we make them more understanding? How do we make them more inclusive? How do we make them places where people want to go to make a difference in the world versus need to go to be able to support their families? So we do a lot of that work. It's not easy. It's not a culture where that is easily recognized. It's easily recognized that it's needed by a lot of the people that suffer from it, but a lot of the businesses that need it desperately, they come to hard terms in terms of actually being able to do that. The other realization, though, is it is what's needed right now, especially where we stand in terms of our post-COVID world and the changes that we've all seen. We can hear all of the different stuff in the media, things that we put terms on like quiet quitting or the great resignation or all those different things. Those are fundamentally people unhappy with their situations and unhappy with the circumstances that they experience at work. Lack of respect, lack of understanding, lack of inclusion. Those are what's driving that. And so how did we come to support this conference? Well, I was at a Binghamton Chamber of Commerce meeting, and Dawn Marie was there, and she stood up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this conference and I need speakers." And I thought to myself, those of you in the room that know me, I thought to myself, well, I love to speak. I wonder what she needs somebody to speak on. I'll come up with something. So I got together with Dawn Marie and I said, "Hey, I hear you need speakers. Let's talk." And an hour later, I was committed. There are few people that shock your world in your life. Dawn Marie did that in that hour. The idea of recognition of the things that you're talking about today, the importance of acknowledging that is critical. It's just one dimension. We have so many dimensions of diversity that we look at. There's so many elements of inclusion that we talk about, but fundamentally, how does that happen in organizations? It happens through leadership, and it cannot happen through leadership. Culture is critical, and a culture of inclusion is the basis for success, and that starts with leaders. So we take this broad perspective of what's the potential impact of leadership, and we try to boil it down. We put it specifically in the context of how can we be more inclusive of this concept that literally 6 months ago, I didn't have an orientation to. I grew up with an autistic brother, and I didn't have the context that Dawn Marie gave me. So thank you for that. And that's why we're here. We have a breakout room. I think, I forget the time, details.
It's on the schedule
It's on the schedule, and I'll also be a part of the panel here later on.
this
But,
afternoon, yeah, and this evening.
Thank you, Dawn Marie.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce somebody that I'm thrilled and honored came. I'm thrilled and honored that all of the speakers came. I gush. But Mike is here to talk to you about his technology Badger, which when I found it out there in the world, I got so excited about it. I immediately messaged my husband and I said, we got to be part of this ride. So I don't want to do too much talking because I want Mike to have his time, but listen hard to what they're doing and think beyond, because I am convinced this technology has a really intense future in terms of neurodiversity, in addition to what you're already doing. So I'm going to step down. You've got the stage.
Thanks, Dawn Marie. So my name is Mike Williston, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Satellite Displays, and we are an early stage startup. So this technology that I'm creating right now isn't on the market yet, but we are in a stage where we're going to be releasing pilots. So what I developed is a closed captioning smart badge called Badger. And so this started, this journey of creating Badger started from a personal experience. So my grandmother is deaf, My dad has severe hearing loss. I have a minor hearing loss, and so does my sister. But it wasn't until my dad was in the hospital for 40 days fighting for his life, where these nurses and doctors didn't have tools readily available or interpreters on staff to help him. So they really relied on my mother to be there to be the interpreter. But not everyone has an advocate sitting bedside 24/7. So this left my dad scared, alone, afraid, not really even knowing what's happening with his life. And that's where, when I had this idea about putting captions on people, just like you could turn captions on a television, I looked at the nurses and the doctors and I said, what piece of technology is out there that we can take advantage of? And that piece of technology was the badge. So every nurse, doctor, and an employee, if you go to a grocery store, a CVS, a Walgreens, every employee or nurse or doctor is wearing a badge. So I said, why not give that badge digital powers and bring it to life? And why not bring it to life with a purpose? So for the first time, you'll be able to now put closed captions and translations on people in real time. So right now, I'm actually wearing the very first prototype of Badger. So I'm on stage, so it's a little smaller, so it's not as intimate as a patient doctor conversation. But right now, I'm going to turn on captions for you guys. So if you can't hear me, you can read my captions. So imagine walking into a store and the person has captions available to turn on. Or imagine if you're traveling and you go to Japan and the person at the front desk is wearing a badger. And when they're speaking Japanese, all of a sudden English comes out. And to stick along with this theme of inclusion and empathy, the great thing about Badger is it connects people around the world. Because hearing loss and not being able to speak a language is an invisible disability. So a lot of my friends, just for an example, didn't even know that I had hearing loss growing up until I started this business. I'm now 33 years old, and some of my best friends are just finding out now that I had a hearing loss. They always kind of knew that I couldn't hear, but I just worked extra hard. And I actually didn't even realize how poor my hearing was until the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, we're masked up. So that made it very difficult. But what the person communicating doesn't realize is sometimes the person might not just be getting what they're saying. And it might not even be a volume issue. It might be a comprehension issue. So with me, I like to be able to hear and read at the same time. So that's why I think closed captions are very important. And our goal and mission is to provide closed captions for everybody everywhere. And that's what we're trying to do here at Satellite Displays and with Badger. If anybody has any questions, I have a table outside. More than happy to do more personal demos. I also just released our beta app in the iOS App Store. It's called Badger Global. You guys can check it out. Like I said, we're in product development. We're launching pilots in Q1 of 2023. So if anybody's out there that owns a business or sees a need or even wants to be a consumer and part of this, please reach out to me. We're currently and aggressively trying to sign up pilot programs. Thank you.
Are you still doing funding with
Yes, so we're not, so the way Dawn Marie actually found me was we launched a equity crowdfunding campaign on Start Engine. That, however, has closed, but we are still raising money. So to date, we raised just a little bit over $1 million. And right now we are accepting SAFE with a 20% discount for our next round. And if anybody's interested, is an angel investor or would like to get involved at some capacity, please find me. I'm more than happy to set up some time to talk and kind of go through the ins and outs of what Badger and the company is doing. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for being here. I appreciate that you took the time to drive. We have about 20 minutes until the next session starts. So enjoy the vendor tables, decide if you want to be back here for the education panel or you want to join one of the rooms. I do want to make sure you understand that Visions Federal Credit Union is here. They have taken up space in the library in the far hall. Stop in there. I was so impressed with Visions when I started to understand what they had already implemented in terms of financial education. You don't even have to be an account holder, and they will help you understand your money, your budgeting, all things in that area. So definitely stop in and say hi to them and understand the programs that they have available. It's really important for this community. If you're needing to set up trusts for your children, if you're needing to think about how to invest so that you have money for the future, or if your children may need help managing their funds, Visions is a wonderful place to stop and talk to, where they are not going to insist you have to, have your money with them or they won't talk to you. They're very inclusive and very willing to help. So be sure you stop in and talk to them. All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you back here at 2.
Oh, what's up, buddy?
I have
Great
like,
job.
oh, hi, puppy. I have breadcrumb trails in my head that help me remember things. And for some reason, I haven't built one for Vanderbilt that doesn't get eaten. I start on my breadcrumb path and like, it just disappears.
Well, what might help with some context in terms of like autism research, Vanderbilt's been the home for many years of Triad, which is at the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, which is a part of Vanderbilt. Triad, I'm sorry, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but basically they've been doing autism research, mostly focused on children for the last few decades. And so Vanderbilt was already a bit of one of those research institutions where we have a lot of experts and stuff that kind of focus on that. And then for the past 5 years, the Frisch Center has been taking a close look at the adult side of things, particularly as it relates to employment. So we have a lot of research teams doing a lot of autism related research, as well as some partnerships with like Yale and Stanford and UC Berkeley and stuff like that.
That's great. I'll give you opportunity to say all of that again, officially. But we can talk about, these are all very casual and they tend to be beautiful expressions of ADD, because all of us tend to like get very excited about like some tangent and we run away on the tangent. But certainly your work at Vanderbilt, but if you want to talk about yourself, your parenting, any of those things, those are really, really welcome.
Okay. In a direction, and I'll go sprinting off in that direction.
Yes, I am a very happy Labrador. I am food motivated and I chase shiny things.
That's one of the upsides of sensory seeking. Yeah. In fact, I feel like everything you're describing is a two-edged sword, but you're talking about the nice side of that two-edged sword.
Right.
We can feel things so intensely, and that means when we can be happy, we can be really happy. And when we enjoy something, we can really enjoy that thing. There are some days I will bite into a piece of chocolate and I weep for the rest of the world because it doesn't taste as good to them as it does to me.
Yeah.
And you learn to hold on to those moments, because on the flip side of that, if you have a negative emotion or a negative feeling, that can also be highly amplified and can be very problematic. But I feel like they're two sides of the same coin.
I think I'm going to snippet that out, and that little blip you just said is probably going to go out to the world to help advertise INAS, because that was really beautiful and perfect. It's something that I talk about a lot with folks, that I will use the sort of superpower language around autism and ADHD, but I always talk about it in terms of yin and yang.
Yeah.
That the exact same thing that gives me my brilliant brain, and I love my brilliant brain, is the same thing that also perpetuates my PTSD.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is the constant learning how to how to manage and create cooperation between our yin and yang sides, our lights and our darks and our grays and our, you know, rainbows and all of the things that we are. And I think that's one of the things that can be difficult for folks to understand.
Yeah.
If they're, even if they're neurodivergent, but maybe not a multi-layered neurodivergent. When you're multi-layered neurodivergent, I think you're a type of extra. It's just like you're extra in all directions, right? When you're quiet, like you're extra quiet, and people are like, "You okay?" You're like really quiet. Like there's something about our aura or our presence or something that like people feel. Like you're in every way. We are extra. We can't even be quiet without extra.
We have a habit of emotionally shouting. So whatever mood we're in, it can almost be overwhelming for people, even like people within the neuro majority. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to be around somebody who's having a really intense emotional state, because we don't do a good job of masking that sometimes, because we're partially like unaware of how much we're broadcasting. But when I meet an autistic person who is like broadcasting all of that, is emotionally shouting, I'm appreciative, because I don't have to wonder what that person's feeling or something. I feel like I can really read that person and understand, you know, what they're going through and stuff, which I think makes my own emotional shouting even worse at times. I have to be careful about that, because I have to remind myself that can be intense for some people, and it can be off-putting for some people, or it can be disturbing for some people. And it's hard when you're in that moment. It's really hard to recognize how much you're broadcasting and trying to dial it. I think it's another reason why when we get quiet, we get like super quiet, because at some level we're just not trying to rock the boat too much, where we're like upsetting and disturbing people.
Yeah, I think understanding the difference between masking and working to appropriately accommodate those in our presence.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to hide who we are. We don't have to not be who we are, but we should be compassionately aware of those we're with.
Yeah.
Where masking is an attempt to not be ourselves and to be like something we are not.
Right.
Moderation. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you stay true to yourself so you can be your authentic self while also being respectful of people? That's not an easy or trivial question to answer, and it takes a lot of work and effort. And the big thing I stress for the people in my life is that, look, I will work really hard on this. I promise you that. In exchange, please understand that's really hard for me, and I'm going to make mistakes. And so I ask from you a little patience and understanding and some feedback, and we'll find a path forward. And the people in my life are people who were willing to do that and put force in that. And for most of them, it's not a sales pitch anymore, because they see the benefits of that. They get me, they understand me. They understand at my core I'm a decent human being, and that sometimes I will be extra and too much. They can even call me back in and rein me in. We've sort of like worked out a way to sort of like effectively communicate that. And as we get better to understanding each other and how we communicate, we have these like really positive, beneficial relationships that have these dark spots, these moments of conflict and stuff. But that's true of all human relationships and stuff. You know, it's not, the goal is not to find the perfect relationship where you never have conflict with someone, but rather someone who, when you do have conflict, we can work it out in a way that we're both respectful of one another's feelings and emotions, and we're trying to look out for each other and help each other. And I think that's something that unites all of us as human beings, is that we all have, whether we realize it or not, a very powerful drive to have that and to be a part of that. And when you have that, your life is just so much richer and much more fulfilling and stuff. And when you don't have that, and a lot of autistic people don't have that, from a mental health perspective, that's a really dark place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons why I advocate so hard for neurodivergence to be seen as a set of neurotypes instead of a set of disabilities and disorders is that we cannot in my opinion, We cannot research appropriately if we're starting with a thing we believe needs fixing.
Right.
We cannot find true life success paths if we're constantly in the mindset that somebody is fundamentally flawed.
Right.
And so, yeah, when folks have a harder time of adjusting for a moment, right now there's criticism for that. There's, you know, it is up to the autistic person to adjust. It is up to the ADHD person to adjust. And I'm working awfully hard through this conference and my other work to try to help people desire a world that everyone's needs and supports. And, you know, it's not just autistic people who need things. It's not just Tourette's people that need things. It's not, you know, it's not just people in wheelchairs that need things. Actually, everybody needs something.
Right.
And what if we built a construct in our attitudes about what it is to be human, that making room for one another it is the preference.
With everybody pitching in and everybody like participating. Yeah, I think anytime you ask one group to do all the work and let the other group just sit back, that's not fair. It not only is it not fair, I don't think it's very viable. One group invariably ends up suffering from that. The goal is that we all try to work. I try to work to understand you and accommodate you. You try to work to understand me and accommodate me. And we're going to meet somewhere in the middle and find a way to interact with each other in a positive way and an effective means of communication. And then once we find that, great things start happening. Like life gets a whole lot better when we get there.
Yeah. I like the analogy of, I call it a teeter-totter. Some people call it a seesaw. And then, I don't know, maybe they call it other things in other countries, but it's the, you know, it's the playground toy where somebody sits on this and somebody, and you go like this, right? If you are of different weights, somebody may have to sit a little closer and you can still do the thing, right? That like if it's a little child and a full-grown adult, that full-grown adult may need to be almost entirely to the balance point, right? They're here and the little one's out here, but they can still do the thing. And to me, that's a way to think about, you know, what a truly inclusive and accommodating perspective is. Yeah, almost always there's going to be a weight difference.
Right.
In needs, in abilities, in capacities. There's always going to be a weight difference, but there's likely to be a way to adjust to one another so that evens out a little bit. We can still do the thing.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot.
Thanks.
Good job.
So
Please stealing that analogy.
okay.
That's a really clever way to sort of think about it. And there's a lot of layers of truth kind of like just buried into that seemingly simple analogy. I like that a lot because it also calls attention to the fact that one person might have a better capacity to try and find a balance with this person than the other person. I often stress when I'm talking to people and trying to educate them about autism is that you can't use me as a benchmark. I'm a very eloquent sort of person. I'm pretty good at putting things in language that people understand. I speak fairly well. And in that regard, I represent a tiny minority of the autism spectrum. Most, 40% of people on the autism spectrum are nonverbal or minimally verbal. And then a majority of them have some difficulty with verbal communication and stuff. I know some people who are just brilliant, can handle a dozen projects at once and just do amazing work every time. And they might struggle for 30 seconds to put together a simple sentence. And when people hear them talking, they just assume, oh, there's not much going on upstairs. No, it's not that. It's a disability where they're just struggling to kind of find the language and stuff. one of the most powerful things I heard from that 60 Minutes bit that they did about us a couple of years ago. They were asking some autistic adults working, if there's one thing you wanted people to know about autism, what would it be? And this one girl put it so well. She said, you know, please don't judge my intelligence based on my ability to talk. That's a really, and your analogy just does such a beautiful job of, you know, someone might be more of a lightweight, might have to work a lot harder. So it's kind of incumbent on the other person to kind of recognize that and kind of shift appropriately, and not just demand that we both set the same distance from the fulcrum. Because then one of us is just going to be up in the air all the time. The other one's going to be sitting on the ground.
Yeah, and I think that's where we find quite a bit of even really well-intentioned accommodation and inclusion efforts. Is as long as you come in and blend with us, we'll make room for you, right? So, you know, I've done a bunch of contract work and stuff like that for different organizations, and you know what, before I understood my own identity as a neurodivergent person, and before I really got better educated in this world, I didn't understand what my needs were. I knew that it was really hard for me to work in the cubes, right? The little beigey. Yeah, that's really hard for me. But then sometimes it was like safety. The cube was safe, right? Like I'd like tuck in there and, right? Like, but I didn't know what was going on with that. I didn't understand why sometimes I could be around everybody, sometimes I could not be around everybody. Sometimes everybody else's noises were the thing that helped me focus, and sometimes everybody else's noises were making me insane and I needed to go like cry in the bathroom. I just didn't understand. And I think one of the things that a truly inclusive and accommodating atmosphere does, when we're thinking about everyone, we're not just including a stereotypical disabled persona, right? That I don't know if you've ever sat in on, you know, write your target audience, right? Describe your target audience. You create these in marketing, you create these pretend people that you're talking to, right? I kind of feel like that's a lot of what happens in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, is we create pretend personas. And then we try to do things to accommodate something we have created. I think research has done that, right? When research isn't pulling in the actually autistic community, the actual ADHD, right? When neurodivergents are not included in this, the structuring, the dreaming up of, the theorizing, all of it, when it comes to research, we're researching a mythical creature. We're not researching actual human beings and their experience. And so I think, yeah, this inclusion work really needs to be something that says, what is the tide that will raise all boats, right? What is the thing that will certainly scoop up those who most obviously need it, but will also benefit people who will come into that space and be like, I didn't know I needed this. Like, yes, I was neurodivergent and didn't know it, but I wouldn't have known I needed a thing until I tripped over it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have that experience, whether they're neurodivergent or not. They come to an experience and it's good, and their mind is opened to, wow, I actually could have a nicer life. If something were adjusted, if something were a little different, I could have a nicer life. Yeah. And then we're not bumping into, I get a lot, especially because like you, Dave, I'm most of the time fairly verbal. I can explain things. I can, right? I don't, people cock their head when I say I'm autistic, right? Well, you don't seem autistic. You don't, really, right? Unless somebody knows and they've known me for a long time. Like when I started telling people who've known me since childhood, they're like, that makes so much sense, right? I have been forgiven so much, like rule insisting and mothering and all kinds of things that people used as criticisms against me because people figured out I was autistic, and that like my brain just was like, but the rules, right? I'm just trying to keep everybody like happy and safe. I hate the rules. I don't like them, but they're there and we have to, right? The whole like, and people from like, you know, high school and stuff, once they figure it out, they're like, oh.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are about to start our education panel. I am seeing wonderful friends on screen. We just need to unmute Michael Strong. And that will be good because Florencia is in and I can see her. There you are. Michael, hello from Texas. Yay. Okay. I think we have everybody we are supposed to have. That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We kicked off the afternoon talking about what equity looks like and what it is to be an autistic child growing into an autistic adult. We heard from some of our wonderful sponsors and from Mike Williston from Badger. So if you didn't get to see that and you're online, you're going to get recordings of everything that happened on the main stage. So definitely circle back and watch all of that. But we have some amazing people with us. I need my notes because I don't remember names. Even when my life depends on it. Matter of fact, it's worse if my life depends on it. The more anxiety, the less I have. So immediately to my right is Lori Eccles. Florencia Arden is out in the universe of the web, so is Michael Strong. Then we have Eileen Monaco down there and Christine Harkness in the middle. Oh, I did that right. I got faces and names and I put them together. That was hard for me. And so part of why I wanted to have a panel of really different people in terms of education is that a neurodivergent child comes into the world at birth, and that neurodivergent child grows into a teenager and then into an adult and travels all the way through their life experience. We don't outgrow our neurodivergence. I am as autistic today as I was when I was 2. Just nobody noticed. And so part of what we're going to be talking about is ways in which the academic community at every level can be a benefit to the neurodivergent community. We're going to talk about some of the ways that education is not at its best right now. And we're going to talk about some ways where it's really making wonderful strides. Michael is joining us from Texas on the web, and he has his own school. So we've got a lot of different ideas and thoughts encapsulated on the stage. Again, I'm going to start with the online folks. You're each going to get a little moment to say who you are, what you're doing, and why you wanted to participate in an education panel designed for neurodivergence. Michael, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Dawn Marie, for having me. And
Michael,
Do you hear
you're
me?
muted.
I'm not showing myself muted.
Okay, you're good now. We can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Excellent. Okay. I was saying thank you, Dawn Marie, for having me. It's a wonderful conference you've put together. I'm going to focus on personalizing education for different children, neurodivergent, and just whether or not we describe them as neurodivergent, people are different in a lot of different ways. Ultimately, I believe everybody has a unique kind of genius, and I'm very interested as an educator, and I think our role as parents and educators is to discover and develop each child's unique genius. That's the theme of my school. I've got a virtual school, a Socratic experience. We focus on entrepreneurial, creative, and intellectual children. And we focus all of our efforts as educators on supporting their genius rather than on school per se. So actually coined the term scholia normative. I live in a world where school is a completely arbitrary creation. And if somebody doesn't fit into school, rather than saying there's something deficient about the child, for me, there's something deficient about schooling. Give you just a couple of quick anecdotes, and in the Q&A we can go into it. I've had several children who were, most of my experience is secondary, by the way, grades 6 through 12. I've had several children enter my schools who were very dyslexic, and sometimes, in at least 2 cases, had been suicidal at previous schools because they felt stupid. And our focus immediately was, one was a brilliant video producer, another was a brilliant stop motion animator. Our focus was immediately on focusing on their genius and helping them do amazing work, and not on remediation per se. I've had students who are diagnosed with obstinate defiant, and immediately we support them in developing their own voice. In this case, he was an amazing entrepreneur, had bought 3 cars by the time he graduated. So in every case, my vision of education is that we customize a program for the strengths of the child. And if Algebra 1 or chemistry class is in the way, so much for the worse for Algebra 1 and chemistry. To that extent, I'm on the edge of self-directed learning. We provide more structure than that. But my entire vision is, let's do what's right for this child to help them be amazing and have an amazing life. And if that implies we don't teach them part of the conventional curriculum, hurrah. I've worked with Montessori educators. I'm kind of at the far end of follow the child with respect to Montessori learning. We personalize everything about a child's program. And as a consequence, I've seen hundreds of kids go from anxious, depressed, suicidal to happy, flourishing, successful adults. I've had neurodiverse children who've gone to Harvard, neurodiverse children who entered the workplace as coders right after high school. Once one supports the individual genius, then everything goes much better. So that's enough for now, but I'm all for let's end scholia normativity and cultivate the genius of every child.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. Florencia, please introduce yourself and tell us about what you're doing down there at Cornell.
Hi, so I'm joining you from Ithaca, New York, fairly close to Binghamton, but I couldn't make it in person. I work in Cornell, and I work in the Learning Strategy Center. And what we are doing there, my position was created a year ago. And the idea is to help students a little bit more than what the Student Disability Services will provide. So they provide the accommodations and support. However, we help them with learning strategies and in other ways to really thrive. And part of my initiative, which is called Neurodiversity at Cornell, is really to make connections across campus. So the steering committee right now is somebody from Student Disability Services, somebody from psychological and mental health providers at Cornell Health, the grad school intergroup dialogue project, which is a project on basically speaking across differences. So it goes very well with our whole thing, and somebody from HR. And what we're trying to do is really create a neurodiversity-friendly campus. So we're a little bit basing our model on Stanford's in the point of view that everybody should know about neurodiversity and accept it. And we have many staff and faculty who are part of our community of neurodivergent people. And we are doing several programs, and we have like 2 courses on Canvas, which is an education platform, and different mailing lists, so that we all keep in touch and really speak about what we need. I'm also launching something called Neurodiversity Ambassadors, and this is a group of faculty, staff, and students who want to speak about what the experience the undergraduate experience or the working experience at Cornell is and how we can improve it.
Wonderful, Florencia. Thank you so much. Why don't we just, Eileen, we'll start with you and we'll work this way. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'm Eileen Monaco. I work at Broome Bosse's, and I'm the principal of the Oak Tree program. So we work with only students with autism. And the methodology that we follow is TEACH. There are pretty much two methodologies in our area that students with autism can go to or benefit from. And so TEACH is one of them. It's based out of North Carolina. And it all comes down to giving the students the structure, a predictable daily routine so that they can become as independent as possible. And then we also have the Dr. Romanchuk program, which I was talking to a few families in here, and they use ABA, so it's Applied Behavioral Analysis, and it's just a different methodology for working with students with autism. But like I said, our main focus is to give them structure and routine so that we can really focus on their strengths. We can build in their needs, and they really show us every day what they need. And once you put it into the schedule and structure, they really benefit. Some people like to say, well, that's great for, the program and stuff, but what about when they're older and when they leave your program? And I always tell people, you have to think about, we all have structure in our own lives. So even though we don't call it TEACH, we all do it naturally. So, prime example, I go to work every day. I tend to park in the same spot. Do I have to do that? No. Does it create comfort within me? Yes. Is it my spot? No. But if someone else parks there, I'm like, what am I going to do? And so those are the moments that our kids go through all day long. So if we can give them comfort and with that predictable routine, I brought a lot of stuff to show, but I know we only have quick 5 minutes to talk about what we do, but we do visual timers so that we can alleviate some of that anxiety of when an activity is going to start, how long you have to finish it. Sometimes timers will also speed them up, right? Like we might have students that want to take an hour lunch and we need them to finish in a half hour. So we'll set that timer as a reminder so that they can see that. So that's pretty much what we do in the Oak Tree program. We do have 22 classrooms up at the area center. It's the Bosse's Area Center. And those students are in 811 classrooms. They are in self-contained classrooms. So our students are classified as New York State alternate assessment. And that is a huge difference between our district-based Oak Tree classrooms, where those students are still following the state assessment track that we have in New York State. And those students have more opportunities to integrate into the general education setting within our Oak Tree program. So we give them structure in our Oak Tree classroom, and we push them into like that first grade classroom with the structure that they desperately need in order to be successful in an integrated setting, which is exactly what we're talking about today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Harkness, and I'm a special education teacher in Horseheads Central School District, which is about an hour from here. I'm the autism consultant for the district, and I'm also one of the consultant teachers. Our autism model is a K through 12 model. We use a consultant teacher model. So we have a consultant teacher for kindergarten through 4th. We have another one for 5th and 6th grade, another one for 7th and 8th grade, and then I do the high school students 9 through 12. So there's 4 consultant teachers. All of our students have autism and are in general education. We kind of call it a wraparound program. So whatever the kiddos need, we provide that. All the kids in our program get social groups multiple times a week, sometimes every day. If the kids need academic support, we provide that as well. And then we provide push-in support into the general education classrooms as well. So at every level, we also have teaching assistants. So say we've got a kiddo who tends to struggle with math, we would prioritize having some push-in support available in the math class for that particular kiddo. That's the model of our program. We're a strengths-based program. We pride ourselves on that. One of the focuses of everything that we do is helping the kids to be self-aware in order to understand their strengths and then be able to use those strengths at times when they are vulnerable and to learn how to do that. That's some of the things that we teach explicitly. Directly for our kids, like I said, all kids participate in social groups multiple times a week. We do academic support as needed. We might pre-teach some critical things so that we know our kiddos are more likely to be successful in certain situations. If we can anticipate certain things that are going to be happening or certain things they'll be expected to do, we may pre-teach that to them. And we've got the push-in support, and then we also do body work with our kiddos as well. So it's not just talk therapy via like social groups, but at a developmental level that's appropriate. So for example, our younger kiddos do yoga every day. The older kids, we tend to do more breath work and more mindfulness meditation. So as they get older, we want them to be able to take these skills with them, find what works for them, and be able to use them on their own. On behalf of our families, we do peer sensitivity training with the general education students. That helps them to better understand our friends, to help them to build relationships, and then it empowers all of them to be able to communicate and build friendships in a way that makes everybody comfortable. We also have we do parent support group 4 to 5 times a year. We may bring in guest speakers. We generally take a poll from our parents and say, what are some things that you would like to hear more about? And then siblings are also invited to our parent support group. We do professional development within the district. We've taught Autism 101. We teach crisis intervention, helping to move all people who work in a public school from a behavioral focused to let's understand what's behind this behavior, what's the need that's coming through here, and how do we meet that in an empathetic way. We've taught alert programs, so understanding sensory profiles of our kiddos and why that's important, and how we can, in a public school setting, meet those needs so that our kids can be calm, alert, and ready to learn. We also do multi-sensory case presentations. So we pride ourselves, again, on being a multidisciplinary group. So we'll get together all kinds of stakeholders and say, let's look at this kiddo and how are we supporting them? How can we improve on the ways that we support them from many lenses? And finally, we like to say it is our job to put ourselves out of a job. We want to give the kids everything that they need to be able to meet the expectations of their daily lives without us. And we are proud to say that every year we have kids that graduate from our program and just don't need us anymore.
Thank you. You're up.
Hi, I am Lori Ackles. I am the director of the Spectrum Support Program at Rochester Institute of Technology. That's in upstate New York, about 3 hours from here. Part of the Spectrum Support Program at RIT also includes the Neurodiverse Hiring Initiative. That's something that Kendra, my colleague, is going to talk about in this afternoon session. But basically, the Spectrum Support Program at RIT, we support autistic college students who are matriculated into our bachelor's degree program. So our students are earning degrees in computer science, game design and development, computational math, every type of engineering you can think of. And we also have a College of Art and Design. So we have many students that are in illustration or graphic design, 3D digital design. So our students are pretty typical college students, just also happen to have autism. So we support them primarily through coaching, group and individual coaching as they come into the college environment, and group coaching as they move through and out. And then we also support the transition from college then to employment. RIT is a co-op school. That means that our students most of our students, about 80 to 85% of our students, are in degree programs that require cooperative education in order to graduate. So that early work experience is super important for our students. If they don't complete the co-op, they can't complete their degree program. So the stakes are pretty high for us to help students as they're coming in to transition into RIT and fairly quickly and be ready for co-op experiences in the summer of their second year. So part of what we do is work with our career services office, and we work with employers like MITRE, who you're going to hear from Therese later too, to figure out ways to get our students ready pretty early, start that early preparation through our Career Ready Boot Camp, and help employers understand how to hire and support our students as they go through co-op or through full-time work, and then to find opportunities to bring them together through networking, mock interviewing, some job shadow events, whatever we can do to bring our students in front of employers so they can better understand who they are and what they can bring to the table. So that's what we do through the Spectrum Support Program. I'm also involved with the College Autism Spectrum, which is I work as a consultant through that group of professionals who support families as they're thinking about how to transition their students from high school into college and from college into work. We work with other colleges to make sure that they know how to support the students on their campus, and we work with both employees and their managers to provide coaching and consultation to make sure that they are being successful on the job. The other thing that I do is through the College Autism Network. It's a network of colleges that are doing the things that we're doing at RIT. So we come together as a group to develop best practices and support each other in something that has only really become sort of something that's happening on college campuses in the last about 15 years, primarily. When we started at RIT, there was about a handful of colleges, maybe 5, who were figuring out that disability services is great and accommodations are needed, but maybe a little bit more and a little bit different. And so that group has grown to now probably over 70 colleges, maybe more. So you can visit the College Autism Network and find a list of colleges and the types of supports that they're providing for the specialized supports that they're providing outside of accommodation. So that's what I do.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody. I'm going to start off with you, Lori, just because you're all warmed up and we're just speaking. But all of you can jump in on any of these questions and even ask questions of each other. Lori, RIT has a reputation for being inclusive. You are known internationally for your program in support of hearing impaired and deaf students. And so, you know, to a certain extent, it wasn't a surprise to me to find that RIT was doing something a little bit more than maybe others are doing in terms of supporting the neurodivergent population and their students. But you're doing this work with this other organization, this College Autism Network. What are some of the things that group, you at RIT and that group that, you know, spans many other schools, what are you finding in terms of how students arrive to you? Are you finding that they feel ready for the college experience, that they have the skills that they need, or do you find that they actually deeply need the services that you're providing?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, I think. I think post-COVID, we're still trying to figure that out. These students look a little different that came into us this fall. They've gone through, you know, several years in high school that look different. So the prep probably is not quite there. But traditionally, we see students who come in better prepared and other students who do not. Some of the things that I think that we see that are missing are the self-advocacy skills, the understanding yourself, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what helps you in the things that you're not so good at. and just being able to say, you know, I need help, and being able to identify who that person is that you can go to. So those self-advocacy skills are something that we do see a lot of our high school students coming in without good, strong enough skills to at least be able to ask for the help when they need it, recognize when they need support and ask for that support. So we have a lot of really bright students that come in, but it doesn't matter how bright you are if, you know, you're not getting yourself out of bed in the morning, or you don't have good coping skills for stress, and you tend to isolate or have trouble asking for help. And so that's the other thing, is those self-help skills that students really need to be able to pull upon, because the reality is, on a college campus, our students are just like every other student. They're living in the dorms, they're going to classes, they're going and eating, you know, at the dining hall, and we are not able to go in and wake them up in the morning or make sure they've had their medications and things like that. Students have to come to the college campus with those skills, so it's super important that they have some of that, those early experiences to take care of that themselves as they're going through the high school process.
Yeah, thank you. I can think of one of the things that neurodivergent kids sometimes run into if they don't have, you know, you were talking about your programs, and you know, first listed like all the things that have to do with like math stuff, right? That was not me. This, being somebody who's dyscalculic, which means I have a different relationship with numbers. One of the things that can be hard for somebody like me going onto a college campus is I now have to budget what my meal cost. I don't just show up in the kitchen and, you know, even if I'm making my own meals, I don't show up in the kitchen and remove stuff and put it there and eat it. I have to budget it, because a lot of schools have gone to price per item food systems instead of all you can eat food systems. But even in an all you can eat food system, you may have to budget your meals. Maybe you have 3 meals on weekdays and only 2 meals on the weekends. But you can sort of use them up, like if you go in an extra time. So this odd little skill of budgeting is one of those things that doesn't work for all of us when we go into these new environments. Florencia at Cornell, what are you finding? How are the students arriving in your space? I know you have the same challenges as Lori, where if they don't come and self-report, it's very hard to find them. But when you do find them, what skills do they have? What skills do they seem to be lacking?
You know, when my, or as soon as my position was posted and it was on the website, we started getting calls, and they had in the past too, from families wanting to meet with us and talk about the needs of their students. Some students, yeah, are coming with very little like independent study skills. So I'm putting like waking up in the morning in there, or making sure that you do your homework at night, or whatever like that, because their parents were doing that, and there was not a good transition onto how to do it in college. And we also have the challenge that we don't have coaches. Actually, we have no manpower for that. We do offer, like, we have a executive function community of practice, and we meet every Monday, and we speak about the strategies that people use. But we are not going to call the students, right? So it is difficult in those cases. In others, what I feel is that what we need is a system change. I was meeting with a family where the son is in one of the houses at Cornell, and he said that he was having trouble with the laundry because he would go in and there are 3 machines, and there is a system to pay into your machine, but he didn't know which paying system was with what machine, and the machines already had their buttons. You could not read them. So I reached out to the director of that house and was asking them, could you have like instructions or maybe color coding? The green machine for money goes with a green washing machine and so on. And they were saying, oh no, the resident advisor brings them in a tour and shows them around. And I was just thinking that doesn't work with somebody who, like me, has ADHD and very bad memory. So just going once or twice with the RA doesn't help you 3 months later showing up and not knowing what to do. So I think in many cases what we need is a reframing of the whole system, whatever it is, no? And that's where I want the neurodiversity ambassadors to put in their expertise and say, okay, we need clearer directions in this space. So Cornell's buildings are famous for being super mazes. It's super difficult to find any place. So just that kind of stuff that we normally don't think about. Like you would not think about somebody needing to be reminded every time of what to do in the laundry room. But it's possible that somebody does need that, right? So we need to do that for them. And also the international students, which is another big chunk of the Cornell population. And we need to consider that they maybe grew up maybe with more advanced machines or maybe with no machines. So we need to be more inclusive for everybody, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. One of the experiences that a first year entering college student can have is that group tour that like you go see a building or you get to see your dormitory and you do it in a group. Okay. So if you're me and you have sensory challenges and groups are hard and new spaces are hard, and I always use my GPS when I'm in my car and there's no I can walk with a GPS, but not inside a building, right? All I've done in that group is manage all of the things that are hard for me. I have not learned the path. I have not learned the things you tried to show me, and I get back to my room and I don't remember any of it. And if I have the courage to go to the resident assistant and say, hey, I don't know how to use the washing machine, and they say, but you were on the tour, maybe I don't do my laundry ever, right? If I meet that first roadblock, I may have experiences that tell me one roadblock means all things are blocked. No, I don't do my laundry. Laundry is one thing. If I can't remember how to get to the dining hall, if I can't remember how to pay for the dining hall, if I forget my student badge, even if it were surgically implanted in my arm, I can't eat when I get to the dining hall. I might not eat. There are things that challenge a neurodivergent person that often we don't think about. And, to your statement, Florencia, we need to be thinking more expansively. Yes, these are young adults. Yes, they're learning how to do life on their own. But yes, every single person, neurodivergent or not, has things that are hard for them. And maybe that needs to be acknowledged as part of our being instead of rejected as, well, if it's hard for you, maybe just don't do it. Right? So, Michael, we're going to get to you, but I'm going to grab these folks on the stage because you're in a unique situation where you're representing the sort of standard school environment, and you're representing a space that is sort of the vocational, technical, agricultural space traditionally, but you have taken on the special education piece of the district. Is that stating that correctly? So you're both kind of in the same world, but your districts are doing it quite differently. You have an integrated system and you have an exclusive system. Can you each talk about what you think the benefits of the system you're in are, and what maybe would be benefited by a little sprinkle of each other's way of doing things? Does that make sense? That question makes sense? Yeah, either one of you want to start?
I guess I'll start first. I mean, we're the most restrictive setting. When you send a child to BOCES, we're the most restrictive setting. So, you know, if we were going to do some changes and stuff, it's really working with the component school districts to see if they have other opportunities for our students. And some of them do, and some of them don't, because it depends on the size of the district, of whether or not they would be able to keep that child in their setting. So, and usually before we would take them in the most restrictive setting up at the area center, we would have them consider for district-based Oak Tree, which is the integrated setting, which is exactly what you guys do at Horseheads, more of the integrated piece. I know when she was talking, I kept shaking my head because we are both in the same world. And I was like, yep, we do life skills. You know, we have a parent support group. I didn't talk about either one of those because we were given 5 minutes and I was like, oh, I don't want to go over my time. And I have a visual timer here that I was going to set for you guys, but I just kind of estimated like where I was in time. But I mean, that's what I would say in terms of our programming and what we offer, that there's definite perks, because some students do need that really intense instruction and really behavioral supports looked at in a different manner. You can't always manage some of our students in an integrated setting. And that is when they might be recommended to our most restrictive setting.
I think one of the benefits of our model, probably the number one benefit, is the fact that the kids, our students are in general education setting. And I think it was Michael who said that that's a construct. A general education placement is an artificial construct, and it is, but it's still the expectation in the United States for most kids that you've got to work your way through public education. And so if we can help them to meet those expectations, to understand those expectations, to be able to predict those expectations, I think we better prepare them for the world. And again, using that strengths-based model and that self-awareness, what are you good at within this construct? Where are you vulnerable within this construct, and how do we support you? But that being said, we do use a little bit of the pull-out model. So our social groups are a pull-out model. We will explicitly teach play skills, friendship skills, but then we have that push-in model. So if you are someone who wants to play basketball with the other kids on the playground, we go out to recess. So instead of you just watching the other boys play, we teach you how to say, hey guys, can I jump in and play with you? Where it wouldn't occur to you naturally to do that. So that element is nice too. One of the strongest pieces I think that we have is that professional development. So if I'm going in and I'm teaching peer sensitivity to the kids to say, this is why he covers his ears in these certain situations, then they also realize, you know what? There's certain situations that are too loud for me, or there's certain situations where I need to do certain things to help me to regulate. I never realized that was a thing. Guess what? It's a thing, and we all do it. But also the teachers, especially our general education teachers, get a lot of training, and their awareness of best practices for all humans is elevated by us being able to have these conversations just about my kiddos in particular, but whatever I'm helping her to understand about my kiddos is going to apply to at least 5 or 6 other kids in her classroom. So it elevates everybody's understanding of human individual differences.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's something that a lot of us in the room can relate to, that as we hear everybody's stories, we find more pieces of ourselves. You don't have to identify as a neurodivergent person to, like you say, not always enjoy particularly loud things, right? You don't have to come straight out of your skin like I do. But sometimes it's too loud, right? Sometimes it's too quiet. Sometimes it's too bright. Sometimes it's too touchy, right? We all have things. And so the more we can be talking about what's going on for the neurodivergent community, we really do benefit everybody. Michael, why I wanted them to go first is because you fall entirely outside of everything that's happening, universities and public education. And I have sort of remotely known you for a number of years because, full disclosure, my brother and Michael worked together. My brother introduced me to some of Michael's ideas years ago, and I've been quietly watching from the wings and fascinated. And Michael, I think an education experience like yours would have been really fascinating for my kids to go through, because they were all so self-led, which was not something that worked well in the standard school systems, and they found almost entirely impossible in a university setting. When they get that high interest thing, they can know, they can self PhD themselves, right? But the standard ways we do things made them feel rejected and not welcome. And your school calls those people to you. Come to me. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What is that sort of breaking the norm that your school does, and how it benefits students who won't find themselves happy in these more traditional environments?
Absolutely. Thank you, Don Marie. And first, I want to acknowledge that, yes, the vast majority of students, certainly, depending on one counts, 80 to 90% are in much more conventional systems, public or private. But especially in the last few years, the growth of alternative systems has absolutely exploded. And so the alternative systems, I think, is a family of systems that provide a lot more agency and personalization. Montessori, Acton, Prinda, there's one in Texas called Alpha. Sora is an online version. The one Elon Musk started, Synthesis, or helped to start. There is an explosion of much more personalized systems. And one of the things that does is allows us to create completely customized paths. Actually, before I back into the education system, I always like to start with the end in mind. The other thing is there's an explosion in cool careers that don't require traditional education. Just to talk a little bit about digital work, a lot of the best jobs in the 21st century economy are digital work, broadly construed. Many of those are creative class jobs, film production, graphic design, UI, UX, animation, audio engineering. There are all sorts of things that lead to great careers, and they don't require traditional academic skills necessarily. It's good to be able to read and write, of course, but completely orthogonal to, I'm going to pick on, academic STEM. I love STEM, all in for math, for people who are into math. I was into math. But there are some students for whom these creative directions are really exciting. If we get them going in these creative directions, it's 11, 12, 13, and they're making money as a creative professional by the time they're 18. How incredibly validating and exciting. Again, the whole entrepreneurial startup ecosystem is there as well. And a lot of kids, coding is another one, where I know a lot of kids who might be neurodivergent who are brilliant at coding. So, with those sorts of destinations in mind, and finally, actually one other destination, while I love conventional college, I'm a big advocate of alternative post-secondary institutions, including art school, design school, film school. I get a lot of neurodivergent kids who, instead of going to a conventional four-year college, go in for more kind of creative professional fields. And I think that's an under-recognized sense of direction. People talk about design as the liberal arts of the 21st century. So kind of backing into it, we have 2 hours of dialogue every day where we talk about personal growth for an hour, and then text-based Socratic dialogue for another hour. The text-based can be audio rather than reading, so dyslexics typically listen to it. But kids love to talk. Human beings love to talk. And the personal growth, much of that is developing a sense of executive functioning and owning your own education, owning your own life. Who are you, where you're going? We mentor every student one-on-one for half an hour every week. And so there's sort of a core community experience where we're figuring out who we are, where we're going, what we believe in. And then beyond that, incredible personalization where some are rock star, engineers going to MIT, others are rock star filmmakers going to a film school. And they like being in a community of purpose driven. So I would say the most salient feature of our community is purpose driven, where a lot of schools have a lot of kids who resent things. Certainly a lot of kids who are neurodivergent may be unhappy in a regular school, but there are a lot of different kids. 75% of American high school students are unhappy, and that's stunning. 75% of American high school students are unhappy at school. 2/3 of American high school students are disengaged from learning. So when you picture the American high school, picture the majority of young people being unhappy and disengaged, and that's not a flourishing environment for anyone. So we have a very purpose-driven program aligned with the child's interest. We have a tremendous amount of conversation structure around discovering who they are and where they're going. We use the purpose diagram, the intersection of what do you love, what are you good at, what does the world need, and what pay for. And this sense of purpose and direction leads students to, I would say, love learning when they're not obligated to do the same thing all the time. So, give you one other example where I've seen so many people. I had one student who was had an IEP in a New Jersey school. He had a full-time teacher's aide following him from class to class in middle school all day throughout middle school. His family moved from New Jersey to Austin to attend one of my schools where he didn't need an aide at all. We just helped him do whatever he was going to do and helped him find a sense of direction. And since I've hired him and he works for me. I have a business partner who is dyslexic and went to a special ed school in elementary school, hated it, went back to regular school, was bullied, hated it, left school at middle school, and now he runs, my brand there is Expat International School. He runs the leading expat relocation agency where he makes more than $1 million a year, has traveled to 80 countries and listens to about 200 books a year. So he's a bibliophile, although he's substantially dyslexic. So I'm in this kind of world, kind of an alternative reality almost, where there's a lot of literature, as you all know, on entrepreneurs and creatives who often are neurodivergent. And so I'm swimming in the sea of neurodivergent entrepreneurs and creators and serving them on their entrepreneurial and creative genius from the time they're young. And it's a blast. I'll just say that. It's really a blast.
Michael, thank you. We only have a couple of minutes left, and so I'd like to ask each of you, and Michael, we'll start with you, but keep it super brief. If there was one thing you could kind of ask of the world that would help you do what you do better, what would it be?
I would say allow the funding to follow the child so that parents can find the best fit for their child. I would never claim my program is best for all children. I used to think there was one size fits all, but now if I had 10 children, I could imagine 10 different educational programs for those different kids. So let the funding follow the child to whatever is the best fit for that particular child.
Okay, thank you. Florencia, do you have a thought on that?
I guess not precisely for my work, but for the benefit of all students. We need, especially staff and faculty, to really, give students the benefit of the doubt and know that when they don't do something, it's not simply because they don't want to or they don't care, but that there are reasons behind that behavior.
Wonderful, thank you. Eileen, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I think just creating more awareness. And when you were talking about doing the tour in college with that one person made me think that's exactly what an aide does, right? But when you put the structure in place that our world needs beyond schools, then it makes them independent, which is awesome. Like I was also thinking, we do better at advertising like a McDonald's burger with all the visuals and the layers and everything versus doing laundry in college. And it could be so simple if we just look at things that way.
Thank you.
I would love it if people would lead with empathy and not make assumptions.
Great. Lori, do you have?
I would say focusing on universal design, so that what helps an autistic student helps other students as well. And so universal design in not just learning, but in design of spaces and college campus, the way college campuses work and the way that employment works for people.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're interested, some of the content in the virtual program, one of which is Sonia Durek from Australia. She does sensory positive interior design architecture. And you can see her conversation with me, but also her team put together a little sort of documentary bit that's part of the program. We're actually going to play it in this room. I'm not sure if that's next or later, but where you can actually see one of the designs that they did for a community building there, where you've got everything from wonderful, safe little cocoonies places to work to really vibrant, bright, sort of bumping places to work. It's very, very interesting. So universal design is certainly something you can find ideas about in the virtual program. But thank you all so, so much for sharing what you're doing, what you're putting your heart into, and doing it so clearly. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to take a short break and then we're going to kick things off again in about 7 minutes. So if you want to come back here for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel, please join us back here. There are great breakout sessions that are about to happen. I will be leading one about access to medical and therapeutic care. Visions will still be here. Lots of stuff to do. Visit your vendors, and we will see you in a few minutes.
Charlie is an Australian multidisciplinary design practice, and we're made up of architects, urban designers, planners, interior designers, and landscape architects. We work across many areas, including workplace, health, education, research, and science settings, just to name a few. I am part of a large research team trying to understand the impact of the built environment on our sensory comfort.
So today we are at the Hobsons Bay Civic Centre, which is the workplace and headquarters of the Hobsons Bay City Council. The City of Hobsons Bay is a local government area located in Melbourne's inner west. It is a very diverse local government area and includes everything from bayside residential suburbs to coastal and wetland reserves to large-scale industrial and manufacturing lots. The Civic Centre itself is located on Parklands, a short walk from Cherry Lake, which is to the north, and about a 10-minute walk to Altona Beach, which is to the south.
In a previous life, we discovered that 18% of Australia's population is neurodiverse. And underlying many neurodiversities is a heightened sensory response. It is likely that 18% of Australia's population is therefore going to have a heightened sensory response to our surroundings. At Charlie, our goal is to understand the sensory profile makeup of our knowledge worker population using a diagnostic tool developed by distinguished Professor Winnie Dunn from the University of Missouri. We set out to achieve 1,000 sensory profiles. So far, we have achieved 932 across 6 different organisations. And the results are mind-blowing and far exceed the original 18% we had assumed.
The industries that we've looked at to date have included government, design and architecture, finance, vehicle manufacturing, dairy production and distribution. We've surveyed almost 1,000 responses to date, and 4 out of 6 businesses identified as being of the avoider sensory profile, which means that those people are more likely to actively avoid the amount of sensory information in their environment. So they might seek out a quiet location to reduce the noise or to use, for example, noise cancelling headphones.
One such organisation had a heightened sensory response of 50%, and that was our lowest out of the 6 organisations. Another organisation had a heightened sensory response of 89%. This is suggesting that sensory design in our built environment is more important than ever.
Sensory design interventions are tools designers can implement when designing environments for sensory comfort. Sensory surveys give an indication of where a person may sit on the sensory profile and can relate to the type of setting a person may feel most comfortable with. And individuals can fluctuate between feeling overreactive and underreactive. Designing workplaces for sensory comfort and inclusiveness comes from understanding how the environment impacts on our sensory experience.
Of particular interest to me has been the alignment of our findings with the recommendations made in the Royal Commission report into mental health systems and research conducted by both Melbourne University and La Trobe Universities into design features that reduce the use of seclusion and restraint in mental health facilities. At this stage, the evidence is anecdotal, but the correlations are there. For instance, the Royal Commission report recommends supporting employers to make people's mental health better at work, supporting them while at work, and being inclusive at work, providing better health services that meet people's individual needs and giving individuals greater choice and control. Services that don't keep people away from others, stop people from moving and doing what they want. Services that support without discrimination and are inclusive. Further to this, the co-authored study by Melbourne and La Trobe Universities found preliminary evidence that physical environments has a role in supporting the reduction of seclusion and restraint in mental health facilities, allowing the individual to better recognise and self-manage their state of well-being. Some simple environmental design interventions noted in the study include good lighting and ventilation, access to natural light, free access to move around, environmental wayfinding, sensory comfort spaces, private, uncrowded and calm spaces, open air spaces such as courtyards, multimodal spaces that have controllable environments, and culturally appropriate spaces.
A holistic approach considers a setting, the surrounds, the arrival and approach, quality of light, textures and colours, sound, air quality and smells, temperature and sight lines and views, privacy and connection, and tools for task enabling. Besides the richness and variety of task settings and a culture that enables choice, workplaces that promote wellness and wellness practices such as movement, hydration, respite and regenerate, teamed with a biophilic environment, can provide further incentive for workplace engagement. One of the key factors to provide comfort besides choice and permission is personal control, how a person can curate their experience for comfort and to what level.
The CEO of Hobsons Bay, Aaron Van Egmond, he asked his design team to create a workplace environment that was inclusive, including the important neurodiverse group of people.
Prior to the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the council wanted to explore agile working. Instead of focusing solely on shared desks and support spaces like you would in a more traditional agile model, it was decided that council would pursue a workplace model that was based primarily on comfort and sensory-based working. The overarching principle of this model is quite straightforward, and that is that any staff member can choose where to sit based off of the tasks they're completing and their comfort levels. The first step to achieving this was to conduct an all-staff survey to determine individual staff's sensory profiles, as well as the sensory demographics happening within council. 3 main design principles were adopted for council's new workplace. The first is that there would be no designated desks for staff. Staff are free to work from a variety of open and enclosed work points, as well as collaborative settings. The second is that the workplace should be designed with a variety of modes, so a mixture of high intensity and low intensity zones. And finally, sensory design interventions should be introduced into the workplace. So these interventions took on a number of different forms and were tailored specifically to suit council's needs.
Here at the Hobsons Bay City Council offices, there are a couple of standout exemplars of multimodal sensory spaces, such as the Danger Zone, a high stimulation multimodal space, the library, a low stimulation space, a community access hub, a welcoming and socially engaging space, the sensory room, a warm and welcoming space that supports wellness and cultural diversity, the collaboration spaces that are dotted throughout the fit out, supporting small gatherings and greater team collaboration, and the parents' room, supporting inclusiveness and privacy.
Focus rooms were constructed throughout the workplace. These rooms give people control over the amount of acoustic and visual stimulation they are exposed to. The ability to close a door on a space has also been shown to have a positive impact on some people's levels of psychological comfort and safety. The focus rooms in the Civic Centre all have a soft, more neutral internal palette, as well as controllable wall lighting that allows them to provide more of a low stimulation work setting. The boardwalk is a major circulation in the workplace, and it connects the two major sites landmarks, so Cherry Lake to the north and Altona Beach to the south. It is an active circulation zone and it has various collaboration settings along its path. It also contains a narrower pathway known as the river. The river connects the internal water features of the space. Both of these elements encourage users to reflect and find their equilibrium through movement, so by following the pathways that they create through the space. As the existing floor plate of the building is quite large and sprawling, it was decided that visual landmarks would be required to help people navigate through the space. Visually distinct meeting and services pods were strategically placed throughout the space. The materiality of the pods differs and reflects the diversity of the broader Hobsons Bay community. There's a meeting room surrounded by a shallow pool that references the bay and the wetlands and lakes. There are pods that were designed in line with the historic architecture in the Bayside neighbourhoods, and there are pods that represent the industrial nature of the local area. So pods that have integrated or made to look like the materiality of some of those lots, and pods that are constructed with locally sourced recycled bricks.
What is important to remember through all this is that in order to maximise the potential for change, innovation, and determining good design outcomes is consumer co-design or user involvement. Use of analytical tools such as sensory profiling and understanding the lived experience and relationships of the individual, staff, co-workers, family, and the community.
It's important to note that participants from each study have actively or passively used strategies to process their environment, perhaps aid, concentration, focus on the task at hand, and to adjust their comfort levels. The research has led us to understand that we fit within sensory profile, regardless of whether we're neurodiverse or neurotypical. So it will be incredibly important to continue our research and to contribute to more design interventions.
People with autism are overrepresented in unemployment figures. By creating more comfortable work environments, I believe we can have a positive impact on employment participation. And with increased employment participation, perhaps we can come up as a society with ideas which are innovative or new that we thought would never be possible before. Charlie is an Australian multidisciplinary design practice, and we're made up of architects, urban designers, planners, interior designers, and landscape architects. We work across many areas, including workplace, health, education, research, and science settings, just to name a few. I am part of a large research team trying to understand the impact of the built environment on our sensory comfort.
So today we are at the Hobsons Bay Civic Centre, which is the workplace and headquarters of the Hobsons Bay City Council. The City of Hobsons Bay is a local government area located in Melbourne's inner west. It is a very diverse local government area and includes everything from bayside residential suburbs to coastal and wetland reserves to large-scale industrial and manufacturing lots. The Civic Centre itself is located on Parklands, a short walk from Cherry Lake, which is to the north, and about a 10-minute walk to Altona Beach, which is to the south.
In a previous life, we discovered that 18% of Australia's population is neurodiverse. And underlying many neurodiversities is a heightened sensory response. It is likely that 18% of Australia's population is therefore going to have a heightened sensory response to our surroundings. At Charlie, our goal is to understand the sensory profile makeup of our knowledge worker population using a diagnostic tool developed by distinguished Professor Winnie Dunn from the University of Missouri. We set out to achieve 1,000 sensory.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It has been an awesome day at the conference. I remember a couple of months ago when Dawn Marie came with this idea and I kept asking her questions. What is it going to be? Where is it going to be? And she kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. And I said, you don't know. She said, only thing that I know is that it's going to happen and it's going to be amazing. And I said, count me in. And she definitely delivered on that. So my name is Latoya Price. My day job, I am the Culture and Inclusion Officer for Visions Federal Credit Union. And what we're going to do is each panelist is going to introduce themselves, but they're going to introduce themselves and answer this question. So Ron, in a conversation with Ron, he said that leaders need more than just properly designed policies and procedures when dealing with the neurodiverse in the workplace. So if you can answer that question and introduce yourself, that would be great. So I'm going to start with Ron because he posed that question.
Okay, thank you. So yes, my name is Ron Crawford. I'm with a company called Unleash Potential. We do leadership development, leader coaching, create leadership development programs, different things like that. Really focused on trying to develop leadership attributes and traits in people to be empathetic and servant focused leaders. In the context of the question, it's really in the context of another discussion that we had going on, which was talking about within business we have some challenges that are especially related to some of the systematic or procedural type things that we do. For example, performance appraisals. You know, a lot of times we have very stringent guidelines within businesses for how performance should be measured, and some of the physical characteristics. We might measure somebody, for example, on their communication skills based on whether or not they can maintain eye contact, or the savviness of their conversations, right? which is really fundamentally, you know, we need to eliminate those things. We need to take those things out. We need to be more appreciative of the differences that people have, especially in some of those areas of focus. What I mean by the statement of we need more than just policies and procedures, we need an infrastructure of support. One of the things that is we really need to recognize in terms of especially trying to support and develop leaders in our organizations, whether they're businesses, whether they're in the community, whether they're our churches, is that they need some support of that. And they need something more than just a procedure that says, no longer do this performance assessment with the criteria that says that you should look at eye contact. It needs to be, how can we be more empathetic? How can we be more connected? How can we be even more trained in some of these things to watch out for or to be aware of? Much of that starts with engaging with the individual and being interested in and learning about the individual, but there's also some of this, which might say more clinical kind of training. So in addition to just that infrastructure of policy, we also need the support structure that can give leaders a sense of if they're doing the right thing or not.
Thank you. Actually, you guys, so I'll jump right online. Kendra, if you can introduce yourself and talk, speak to that question.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So my name is Kendra Evans. I'm the coordinator of the Neurodiverse Hiring Initiative at Rochester Institute of Technology. And as you heard earlier from my colleague, RIT was a leader in helping students transition from high school to college. And now we're running point on helping students transition from college to career. So what I do at RIT is I work with our students who are job seekers to secure their cooperative positions by helping to build their skills and job readiness. But I also work with employers to discuss the question that you just asked me. So just this week, we had a workshop for employers talking about universal design and how to not only help our neurodiverse job seekers, but how our policies and suggestions will help everyone that's a candidate at your institution so that you really can find the person who is most skilled, not the person who necessarily makes you feel the most comfortable during the interview process. And so some of those things in terms of what do we need to provide businesses and hiring managers with, specifically, I go through a lot of strategies for what to do before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. It's also important to talk about the onboarding process and then how do you manage and mentor neurodiverse candidates once they become your employees. And so that is some of the things that we're doing at RIT is we're really a pipeline between our neurodiverse candidates and employers. I've had the opportunity to work with one of our panelists. I look forward to hearing from her again today too, from MITRE. And I think I'll stop there until there's a question. So hi, friend. Yeah.
Segue. Thank you very much. Teresa Thomas. I work for MITRE. We are a federal contracting agency in Boston and DC areas. And I run two programs for MITRE. One is an internship program for neurodivergent students. And most of our students are on the autism spectrum. We recruit very specifically from schools that we know have strong autism support programs so that we can get some back-end support for those guys and gals. And we're about half and half, actually, guys and gals, oddly enough. And then the other program I run, it's called Neurodiverse Federal Workforce, and we are piloting neurodiversity at work style programs in federal agencies to teach the feds how to do this as well. To your point, policies and procedures, if you've got them, you sure as shooting better follow them, is the first thing. But then what do we need more than that? And I think back to, I call it the road show. So whenever I do trainings, I try to get folks to come away with two things, and they're just about understanding. And one is about understanding what folks need, and that almost always boils down to clarity. How do you give clear direction? How do you set clear expectations? How are you clear in what you're doing? And the other is understanding yourself. And when you catch yourself saying, everybody knows that. That's common sense. You need to stop yourself because not everybody knows it, whatever it is, unless it came out in a memo this morning, then okay, maybe if they read it. But that understanding that the things that are obvious to you are not the things that are obvious to other people, and making space for that and then creating clarity around it.
Thank you.
Yep. Hi. So my name is Mike Williston, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Satellite Displays. And we are a early stage startup that created Badger. And Badger is the world's first closed captioning smart badge. And it can also translate in 50 different languages. So there's a lot of folks out there that have hearing loss, that might be deaf or speak a different language. And I always like to say it's an invisible disability. So one of the problems is if an employee walks in, and me being one of them, I never came into the office and said, "Hey guys, I can't hear you." So when folks would be talking behind my back, I wouldn't hear them and they would think I'm rude. But that wasn't the case. So really having the tools available for people that might not know how to communicate to somebody that has hearing loss or speaks a different language is very beneficial. And so one of the missions here at Badger is we're trying to improve communications through innovation, and being able to provide closed captions and translations in real time when you need it most is very valuable.
Thank you, Mike. You said something that I want to kind of touch on a little bit. You said, when I was in the workplace, I didn't tell people that I could not hear, right? Did you ever ask for any accommodations? Did you feel psychologically safe that you could ask for accommodations? What was kind of your experience in the workplace like?
A mix of both. One, I didn't know that they even existed. So I grew up with this hearing loss from since I was born. And as a lot of people know, like, you have to have hearing aids. And back then it was like really big hearing aids, and I was nervous that I was going to get picked on. So I never really established wearing hearing aids. I just worked extra hard. But then when I graduated and realized I needed hearing aids, even though I could turn the volume up, I needed to still be able to see the person smile, see the body language. So it's more than just the audio being louder. It's a bunch of different things. And then with that, it's just not feeling comfortable or feeling like you're included in the conversation, because you don't want to say like, "Hey, I have a disability." Like, a lot of people don't like to classify it as that. And sometimes even through this journey, I never even thought I had a issue, so to speak. So it's being able to bring a conversation that in most ways a lot of people have been suffering in silence.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it's so true of suffering in silence. Some people just do not want to, or they do not feel psychologically safe to say, I have a need, right? Not everybody in the workplace is neurotypical, right? But the minute that I now say I'm neurodiverse, everybody's going to treat me differently, right? So I asked the panel, what are some accommodations that we can do in the workplace to help those who are neurodiverse?
We'll go close. I was actually thinking about that when you mentioned it, when you said you had no idea those accommodations existed. So I think talking about things is one of the best things we can do to help. And we had one of our students said, I just found out a couple of years ago that I can ask for the accommodation for spelling to not count against me on my papers because I'm dyslexic. She was like, I didn't even, right? Didn't even know that was a thing. And there are so many people just at MITRE, we're about a 10,000 person company. So many people have no clue that they can ask for accommodations for things like someone to take notes during meetings, or, extra prompts with remembering things, much less how to, because there's a form, and things like that. So I think one of the best things you can do for your staff is to let them know that these things exist and where to go to find them. AskJan.org, by the way, is where you go to find them. AskJan.org again. I think there's so many, right? There's so many, but that's a great way to just let folks know they're there at all.
One, I think too, from a certain sense, one of the things that you have to have is not necessarily a specific accommodation, but you have to have an environment or a culture where that's acceptable, and that it's not ostracized, that it's not somehow or another kind of gamed to who can we pick on now type of circumstance, right? A lot of that, unfortunately, it's fostered and it's promoted by the environment that we create in our work environments. And if we have a a tolerant environment to that, then it's going to make it very difficult for people to ask for help or ask for accommodations. And so, I mean, I'm sure we see them all, right? You know, oh yeah, he's got to have an extra big monitor because he's got to blow up the, you know, and everybody's kind of picking on it. You know, it's just, it's not. We need to work to eliminate those cultures in our workplace and not make them as acceptable, you know, in a certain sense as they've become.
Thank you. Kendra.
Yeah, I'd really like to amplify what the panelists, my co-panelists have just said. It's the idea of culture in the workplace, and that concept of universal design, rather than making someone ask for the accommodation, if we offered it to all, because everybody is neurodiverse in some way. We process at different speeds, we process in different ways. And the more commonplace we can make the concept of being your best authentic self at work in order to forward your goals. I mean, everybody that's on the job wants to succeed, and we want to give the tools to our employees to be able to do that. And most of those tools are not excessive. They don't require a lot of capital expenditure in time or money. We're talking things about knowing the proper mode of communication, or being allowed to use headphones, or the ability to work from home because of social anxiety, or because I have kids at home that I have to be able to take care of, right? When we talk about universal design and being our authentic selves, that happens for every human. And the more we can transition culture in the workplace to accept that rather than stigmatize it, the better the bottom line for everyone. And of course, the better the quality of life for all of the employees and the managers. And so I do just want to reiterate that many of the things that help an employee be their best authentic self are not expensive outlays for the company. And those are things that I go over when I work with employers as they're about to hire one of our students, perhaps. Simple accommodations like, what is the quiet workplace? Or can you set up a buddy system so that the employee always knows who to ask? And what form of communication, right? I recently started a new role, and when are you supposed to use Slack versus email versus texting, right? These are things that are not, to Teresa's point, right? Unless we've explicitly stated it this morning, don't assume people just can swim in this pool and understand where the deep end is, because they don't. And that's true whether you're neurotypical or quite neurodistinct in your presentation. So I think that it's great that we could dig into some of those accommodations and how to create a culture that works for everyone.
Thank you. I think in our culture, we're now normalizing differences, right? We recognize that not everyone learns the same. And sometimes the best accommodations, and Kendra said, are free. It is that natural support, right? As a leader, as a coworker, asking, how do you learn? How can I support you, right? I know we love Zoom meetings because we haven't been doing Zoom for the last 300 years, but not everyone performs well and on every single platform. Right? There may be someone that needs to turn off their camera, and they're not turning off their camera because they're really cooking and doing laundry in the background, that's just something that they need to do. So it's asking, how can I support you? What's the best way I can support you? And also too, with companies, not everything is an accommodation. Some things are just performance enhancers, right? So if I ask for something, I don't feel I need to fill out 1,700 forms for you to get me a screen protector. Right? That's also something that stops people from asking, is the hassle, right? And if you have a problem filling out forms and now you have to fill out 17 and send them to HR, who sends it to a panel, who sends it back to HR, you're not going to go through that, right? So simplifying the process. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I think one thing I would add to that is, especially from a leader's perspective, one of the things that gets in the way of this being done effectively by leaders is what is a natural human kind of reaction of, is somebody trying to pull one over on me, right? Is somebody just trying to get every accommodation that they can, every, you know, oh, they see there's something that they can get, so they're going to try to get it even if they don't need it, right? And we have to kind of give up that sense a little bit to be able to be more accepting. We have to say, hey, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, if we built a culture of trust and respect, then let's live that in terms of giving these people these accommodations versus thinking that every one of these is a battle that you have to justify why you need that. That's what drives those processes of 17 forms, right? Is we got to make sure that everybody is, that nobody's getting this that doesn't deserve it.
Definitely
I would
agree
just-
with that. Does anybody else want to
Yeah, and if I
comment on
could
that?
jump in. Oh, sorry. I really think it also depends on how we talk about it and when we talk about it. I love calling it performance enhancer as opposed to accommodation. That applies to all of us. This should be seen as a performance enhancer, and it's about setting the culture so that that's really a possibility.
Thank you. So we're also thinking about the hiring process, right? There was some discussion about the hiring process and how we can have some accommodations in the hiring process. So I'm going to go to you first, Mike. What are some accommodations, or even just talk about the hiring process for you? What are some challenges that you may have encountered, or some things that you see other organizations doing?
Well, I'm an early stage startup, so my hiring process is a little bit more challenging than I think the folks up here. For me, Ron, it's your name, right? Ron. Yeah, as Ron was stating about trust, when I hire somebody, I don't have time to check every single thing that he's doing or she's doing. So you have my trust until you don't, is the way I like to look at it. And I think building tone from the top is crucial. So being able to be a leader where you build a trusting platform for people to perform at their best ability, that's my job. My job is, what do you need? How can I help you succeed? Because as a leader, as the owner of the company, I really need my workers and my employees to perform. So my job is, I work for you and not you work for me almost. So if you need help or if you need something, I want to make it a culture that you're willing to Slack me or email me or text me or give me a call, because I want to be able to help you be the best that you can be, to in turn then make a more successful company.
Wow, are you hiring?
Eventually, yes.
Teresa?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So changing the hiring process for neurodivergent people is my job. So I have some things to say. Um, I think, in the small ways that we change hiring, and I think really with the students that we hire, other than the fact that we recruit pretty targetedly, the biggest change is we send out the questions ahead of time before the interview, because it's not about a gotcha, and we want people to be their best. And so it's back to that. What do you need to be your best in this interview situation? And we let you know what's coming. We let you know who's going to ask what and who's going to come in what order when we first start talking. We try not to do too much chit chat with students who don't want that. We do with the ones who do. And we teach the managers, this guy might talk funny, maybe really slow. We've got a guy that works for us who talks really slow, and a lot of assumptions come with that. He's brilliant, and his answers aren't going to be the ones you're used to hearing. He's not going to tell you he knows more than he knows. That's the other thing we teach people. Most of these students who are on the spectrum don't think they know something unless they have written a book on it. And so they're not going to say, yeah, I can do that, if they can't teach somebody else how to do it. So you got to pull out of them what they actually know. You say you wrote this for your anime club. How did you do that? Well, I did it in Python. Well, you didn't say you know Python. Well, I learned it over the weekend so that I could do it. Well, okay. So that actually is really great. And then on the flip side of that, there are some big changes we make when we work with the pilots that we do with the federal government. There's something out there called the Autism at Work Playbook. It's a free download. It's about 60 pages about how to start a neurodiversity program. And the system that the neurodiversity at work now, neurodiversity at work employers roundtable uses, basically goes along the lines of, they have a big recruiting group. They come in for a week or multiple weeks and spend time doing the tasks that your company does and getting to know folks. And that gives them a chance to relax, gives them a chance to find out if they like that work or not, gives you a chance to see them in a real work situation, and you're not relying on what they tell you about themselves or how well they chit chat, or to your point, how well they make eye contact. And you see what they're really good at. And then at the end of that, you train the folks they're going to. But that's sort of the core of a big part of the movement is finding out what people actually can do instead of how well they can present themselves. So that can be done in other ways besides a 4-week, mini boot camp thing. That can be done with, give me a presentation about this type of a program, or give them a snippet of code and say, do you see anything there? But
So but just before we move on to Ron, can we have a success story? Is there a story that really sticks out to you where you've had someone come who was neurodiverse, neurodivergent, and just seen them in the workplace flourish?
yeah, I mean, this gentleman I was talking about earlier, he actually came in through our pilot with the government. He did the week-long boot camp, and I got to see the way he thinks because he had the time and the space to say the things that he was thinking. And he was not chosen. We had 6 candidates. They could only take 4. He wasn't one of those who was chosen, but a couple of weeks later, I was talking to a manager who was like, no, I can't take any of your interns. I only need full-time people, and I need people who can do this and this and that and think that way. And I was like, I got a guy. And so I taught them how to interview and what to expect. And I didn't have to prep him. And I had nothing to do with the rest of it from there. They took it. And I found out later that they do that with their staff normally. We're an engineering firm. They need to know you can, engineer things. And they asked the standard question. And they said his answer was totally different from what we hear. We've never heard that answer before, and he was spot on. And he's doing really well. Now they're struggling now. We're contract based, so you have to find new work as soon as your contract ends over and over again. And they said our problem is, we find him a month-long project, and he does the work in 2 weeks, and then we got to go find him another project because he's too fast. So yeah, he's doing great.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff covered there. I think a couple of extra points that I would add in is, first of all, I think that the process tries to get done too quickly. And I don't think we take enough care and invest enough time in it to really allow us to truly learn about the individual. And I think part of that goes back to what has been a problem with hiring for a very long time, which is that we get wrapped up in trying to find somebody like us. We try to find somebody that looks like us or acts like us or thinks like us. And so essentially that can be a very quick decision, almost binary decision. 2 minutes into the conversation, I can tell if you're like me or not. And if that's how we structure our process, and this takes a lot of our own self-analysis, our own self-awareness, we have to understand, hey, this is something that I'm doing that is not going to be productive in the big picture to what I'm trying to accomplish. If we can embrace that and understand, now we're talking about some of the things you're talking about, where we will take the time to actually invest and find out about somebody, not find out about somebody like from a background check or from, an employment check or something like that, but actually get the time to understand why they think they could do the job. What gives them the confidence that they could do the job? And maybe even explore how the job that we are interviewing for them maybe isn't exactly the right fit, but hey, I've got another idea where you would be a good fit. And to start to make that, I think that hiring, especially with the challenges that we have today with the labor market and the different things like that, it needs to be much more multifaceted and much more robust to be able to support us in the future. Because these older processes of just kind of, hey, there's 15 other people behind you that I'm just going to chunk down the line and find the next one until I find one that looks like me, are not going to work.
Thank you, Kendra.
Yeah, I think as studies show, we don't want teams made up of all the somebodies that look and act and think like us, right? Your bottom line improves by diverse thought, and so does innovation, and that's what we're all seeking. I am very passionate about this. It's what I spend my days thinking about. It's what I spend my nights thinking about, is how can I help employers make this more inclusive so that they're not passing up my underrepresented and untapped talent pool at RIT for my students. So to amplify, yes, give those questions in advance. It's not about a gotcha. It's about what they know and what they want to tell you. And also outlining the timeline of who we're going to be with, where it is, when, the mode. And one thing that hasn't been said yet is as we're taking time in this process, please take the time with those job descriptions. One of the biggest obstacles for my students is differentiating between a must-have skill and a, boy, that would be awesome if you also knew how to do X, Y, and Z. Because if they're all lumped together in things you're supposed to know or preferred qualifications, my students will very literally take those as, if I don't know this entire list, I should not even apply. And that's all things that can be done ahead of time to make the process more inclusive. Then when you're actually running the interview, definitely preview again the run of show for the day, where we're going to go, help out with that. And those questions that you ultimately ask and that you've given to them, I certainly hope that they're skills-based, that they're single step, so that you don't get lost as you're answering those questions, and that you give a lot of wait time, because thankfully not everybody talks as fast as I do. You need to give that processing time. And also, if you're using one of those new modalities like HireVue, give unlimited recording attempts. Not everybody can on the fly just record it to the best of their ability. So those are just some important things. And then lastly, part of the process, after that interview, let your job seeker, let them know when they can hear from you and how that's going to happen, so that their supports can help follow up as well, and let them know what to expect in terms of a timeline and the paperwork required. And one thing that I'll say that is a hiccup for most of my students has to do with housing and transportation. So while remote options are really helpful for some students, as the panel has already discussed, not everybody can do remote or will do best that way. And if they're going to be live on your campus, right, housing and transportation is difficult for everyone when you move to a new city. But I have found that as a common struggle for my students who are on the spectrum. I can see that Therese is ready to talk, so I just wanted to stop there for a second so we can bounce off each other.
So I'll let everyone speak.
I just want to point out that we know this isn't easy. What we're asking you to do is not the normal, easy, quick. You walk in the room, you're like, oh, I feel it in my gut, which usually means that they're like you. That is the easy way to do it, and it's the fastest way to do it, but it's not the most effective in the long term. And the ROI is huge. I mean, these guys are great. They'll stay forever, and the diversity of thought you get is amazing. And there's one other thing just the universal design part of that, telling everybody what's coming. My favorite story to tell, we had a big awards event at our company, and they had a big call for everybody who was involved in it before it happened. And they told us where it was, what it was going to be like to park there, what the door was going to be like when we walked in, who was going to hand you what, where people were going to sit. And they walked us through every moment of the whole night. And I started to think, this is a long meeting. I don't need to know the color of the carpet in this place. But wow, I was so thankful when I got there. I knew exactly what it was going to look like. And just those extra few minutes of telling people what's coming takes that anxiety level way down for everybody. And then you really get to see who they are.
Because they even do that on planes, right? This is your captain speaking. We're 10 hours out, right? So you get that direction. So if you even think about in our normal life, we are given that direction, what's coming next, how important that is to us. Like, I don't know if we're 10,000 feet over the Pacific. That means nothing to me. Am I going to get to my gate on time is my question. But it still is something that I expect. And I think that's something that we can do in the workplace. And just another point that I often tell employers, that equity and equality is not the same thing. So if you have an interview process where a person has to go through a panel interview, and that's the way that you do things, you are not considering those who have social anxiety, right? Those who have difficulty in large group settings. You are now excluding candidates from even applying if that's part of your process. So really touching on equity and equality, what are some things that are fair but not necessarily fair for all that you've seen when it comes to the neurodivergent in the workplace? Anyone can share.
So I think that one of the, and it was mentioned before, one of the things that we often look for, I kind of call it the thinking on your feet, the quickness to respond, the ability to formulate an answer to something. In some cases under pressure. I mean, we'll use again the example of the panel interview. one panelist throws the question at you and you got 5 people sitting there staring at you, waiting. One of the things when we used to do, when I used to be part of panel interviews is, it's very intimidating when all of a sudden you start answering and everybody's head goes down and everybody's taking notes, right? And it's intimidating, right? It's kind of like, oh, what did I say that now they're writing it down? Was that spectacular? Was that spectacularly bad? Things like that, right? So I think that those things they have their point, but worrying about how effectively somebody performs under pressure, unless that's actually a criteria, right? Unless your job is you're hiring somebody to be like a play-by-play announcer and they have to come up with the words quickly like that, it's not really relevant. So give it space, give it room, give it the ability to, and make somebody, I think here's the other part of that, is make somebody aware of the fact that, hey, it's okay to have a thought about it. It's okay to think about this for a minute. We're not going to judge you because of the fact that you don't start talking as soon as I stop talking.
Right.
Count to 7. That's another thing I tell everybody in all my meetings. You ask a question, count to 7. Which, I don't know, it works. 5 is never long enough. 10 is always way too long. 7's magic. But that brings me to the point of that's good for everybody, in that you asked things that we've seen that may not be equal but are more equitable, and I couldn't think of a thing. Because the things we ask for are, clarity, quiet place to interview, time to answer the questions ahead of time. That doesn't not help anybody. So I'm very, very few, if any, things that we do for folks who are neurodivergent. The difference is everyone will be a little more comfortable, a little happier. Some people will survive. And that's where it becomes different. You have to do it. That flickering light above the desks, everybody hates it. This guy is losing his mind. So the fish in the microwave, things like that.
So Mike, I know you're a startup, and when you designed this device, it was primarily for those that were hearing impaired.
Correct.
Now being at the conference and hearing the things that we're saying, is there any consideration for the neurodiverse community, or what could come? Or I know you don't want to give any trade secrets away, but just share a little bit of where you see your device going, or what do you think some more adaptive equipment out there could be improved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a reader, writer, learner, and I think we talked about how people learn in different ways. So I've been talking to a lot of people, and they've been saying that people with autism, they typically would rather read, or they have difficulties looking at people in the face. So having the ability to be able to read captions along and listen using multiple senses all at the same time, it's really beneficial and really will help not only the person that might have the disability, but the person that is communicating. Because most of the time when you have a disability, like if you break an ankle, you put them in a wheelchair. And then when you go into the hospital with a wheelchair, everyone knows that you need help up the steps. But with hearing loss, or if you speak a different language, or if with autism, like Dawn Marie was saying earlier, everyone looks at her and she's on stage, she's performing, she's doing great. But deep down, they don't know that she has those episodes. And I think it's those invisible things where if we can just start asking questions, and somebody was talking and it kind of sparked something that happened with one of my engineers, where in the startup world, you're always putting out fires. So my relationship with a lot of my employees is, hey, we have a problem. We need to solve this, figure this out. There's a fire, put it out, boom, hang up. Next one, oh my God, someone's complaining about this. We got to fix this, solve it, bang, put it out. And as you're trying to grow and accelerate the business, you lose the compassion. And I noticed like halfway through that I kind of forgot who he was as a person. And I took myself out of like Badger for a second. And I asked a simple question that went a long way and gave us new life. And that simple question was, hey, Ray, how are you doing? And it caught him off guard, where he was like, how am I doing in the business or personal? And I said, no, personal. And then all of a sudden, I found out that his wife was in the hospital. His son was moving. He just had 2 new grandkids, and all of this stuff going along. And here, as a leader, I didn't know any of this, and it was a big oversight on my part. And that's why really being able to connect as a leader and connect in diversity, inclusion, and empathy, and really trying to figure out what is that employee struggling with at home. Because if you think you can separate personal and business, you just can't. So being able to connect the two is something that I strive for.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think of something in a workplace environment I was once in that every office had, or every location had mothering rooms, right? And this particular office only had male employees, but they did have someone on their staff that was neurodiverse and wanted to use the room. And the manager was like, no, that is strictly for nursing mothers. And I was there and I was like, so which one of you are nursing? You know, it's also being flexible to repurpose things where that could be a wellness room, right? Or for those of us in customer service, that's a place you go after customers yell at you all day long to decompress. But it's just thinking that we don't have to be so rigid to policies and procedures, especially when there's room. We're supposed to provide a room for this, but we could also use it as a wellness room if it is not occupied. So I think that kind of speaks back to what Ron was saying, where it's not always about policy and procedures. And joining what Mike said, you sometimes have to be a human. So I ask you, Kendra, how can we be more human? I know that's a different type of question, but it's a real question. How can we be more human in the workplace?
Well, I think it all ties back into, so I started my career as a first grade teacher. And what we were talking about earlier, like fair is not equal, I think came out of my mouth to my students, I don't know how many times each day. Fair is not equal. And I think that as coworkers, as supervisors, it's something that we really need to embrace. And this concept, I know we keep throwing around the word universal design, but everybody's going through something in our lives, whether it's a health matter or something that's going on with a loved one or a learning difference or something. We're all dealing with it, but we all keep it locked up at work for the most part. And so to amplify, right, we need to know our coworkers to the best that we can. So it's about creating that culture in the workplace through various social events. And as I might say that, and I know that my students in particular don't always thrive in those environments, but for giving different people ways to plug in, ways to contribute, and to share who they are in a modality that works for them, whether you're an extrovert like me or an introvert who needs to be able to send an email after a team meeting with my ideas because I don't want to share them up front, but I do still want to be included and share. And it's that concept that these are performance enhancers. They're not accommodations. And as I said, I was a first grade teacher and I did a lot of training for helping dyslexic students. And I had to justify why I was teaching reading and the way I was teaching it at the time. And the truth is it's about best practice, just like we're talking right now. Everybody performs better when they know what's coming. Everybody performs better if they can see those questions in advance. You're not helping just one person, you're helping move your entire organization forward. And so to be more human is the idea that it's not a handout. You're actually looking at your bottom line and you're enhancing the performance of everybody here, because the better I do, the better we do. And that's really got to be the culture of the company.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You know, I think it's relevant to what we were talking about with the hiring process, but I think it's also just the leadership process and being human is providing feedback. And I think that's one of the things that I really, that grates me about especially the hiring practice, is how many people go through that anxiety, go through that emotional process of trying to get a job. And then their answer is, sorry, we went another direction, or we found another candidate, something like that. I fundamentally believe that we as humans, we owe them that feedback. And in fact, you know, in my breakout session earlier, I had a young man that was kind of talking about that frustration of trying to find a job. And I got a sense that part of the frustration was he'd go through those interviews and then go home and have no reason or to understand or no understanding why he didn't get the job. And so he's desperately trying to find a job. He's desperately, you know, the age old question of can't get the job without experience, can't get experience without the job, right? But there's not that feedback mechanism to what can I do differently? What can I emphasize differently next time, right? And so I think that that's a basic human response that we can do. And not just from the negative standpoint, but also from the positive standpoint. How can we encourage people? Sometimes it just is, we had so many fantastic candidates. You were a fantastic candidate. We just don't have the job for you right now. How many people go away from an interview just hearing, oh yeah, I didn't get the job, and thinking that they totally weren't a match at all. So that would be one way to be more human.
I think that really works long-term in the workplace as well. And I got to tell you, folks who are ADHD, folks who are autistic, they assume they're doing a bad job. If they have no news is bad news. And you got to let them know if they're doing a great job or an okay job. Otherwise, they're just going to assume that you hate everything they do. That's just their default. And my answer to that, how to be more human, would be to give the benefit of the doubt. We had a student, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, who was falling asleep at his desk. And we sort of assumed he was just staying up late gaming, which, okay, might have been a factor. But come to find out down the road, he wasn't eating. To that point from earlier, he had new roommates. He didn't like how they kept the kitchen. And so he stopped going into the kitchen and he wasn't eating. I don't know that he could have expressed that even, but getting to know him and understand him and just in talking found out that was going on. But benefit of the doubt across the board is never going to serve you wrong.
Awesome. Just
How you doing?
how you doing? No, I always say the reason why I said be more human is because I think a lot of other adjectives or descriptors are performative, right? So if I say, how do people be nice? You can pretend to be nice. You can fake being nice. You can fake being kind, but you cannot fake being human. And as human, we have certain drivers that just go right into effect, and that's to protect others, right? Support others. So that's the reason why I use that word. Do we have any questions from the audience or questions online that we can answer now? We're going to open up the question and answer period. Maybe we have any questions for the audience, then we'll turn it on them. So I'll ask one. What are some challenges that you see for the neurodiverse in your workplace? And you don't have to name your employer, because I know you do that. You may not have a job on Monday, but or maybe in your past experiences that you've seen that you'd like to share, or maybe some things that you've done to help be a support system, or you've gotten support. So I'll ask that question to the crowd, and maybe panelists, if you want to jump in, you're welcome to as well.
Yeah, I'll share just a little story of maybe it goes back to the equality equity, but I have a client that they have a very high population of employees that are veterans, and so therefore by natural result they have quite a few that suffer from PTSD and things like that, and so they're a very compassionate company from that standpoint in terms of looking out specifically for those veterans and a high sensitivity to the fact that there may be PTSD, and especially in a manufacturing environment that they work in, that there may be noises and things that trigger that. And it was interesting as I worked with this client to discover that there was actually, I would say, an animosity from non-veterans who felt like there was a special treatment to the veterans. And in fact, in the group that I was dealing with, there was 4 females there. 3 of them had been sexually assaulted as teens, 1 younger than teen. All 4 of them had been sexually harassed in the workplace. 2 of them felt emotionally affected from prior jobs, not in that work environment. And they're like, we have PTSD too. We have these, but in our culture, our HR seems to only care about the veterans. And so I think the moral of that story is we have to be careful that we just don't over categorize people, that we don't oversimplify what we want to as the problem. We have to realize that there is a breadth of a lot of these things that we talk about, and we have to be careful and we have our eyes open to be aware of that.
So I have something to kind of go on that, and also something you said earlier. I think as humans, we tend to want to put a label on it and point like, that's this. And to this, I think the reason like veterans gets a lot of love is because it's the veterans. So obviously you can say, oh, he was a war hero, and you understand it. You can really put yourself in those shoes and see those pains. But to the point where you were saying the room with childbirth or yeah, the nursing room, like, why do we have to label that room? And I think it's just as humans, that's just how a lot of people's brains work, where you want to be able to point to it and say, this is why. And sometimes there's not an easy answer. And I think getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is something that I think leaders and organizations really should strive to.
Definitely. I think I'll leave and kind of wrap this up. For me, I think the biggest message, or actually I'm going to ask everybody on the panel, and I'm going to go to you right next, Kendra. Accommodation is not favoritism, right? I think I want to drill that out to people, understanding that when someone gets accommodation in the workplace, it is not favoritism. It's not preferential treatment. This is what I need to do my job. This is what I need for me to show up at work as my authentic self. And something my father always says, that you being you shouldn't stop anyone from being them, and vice versa. So I just wanted to kind of end with that, and then I'll throw it to you, Kendra, and then I'll give our final thoughts.
Thank you for that. I thought that was fantastic. I just wanted to amplify the concept of how it's okay for the veteran, but not okay for those that were kind of bearing the silent warning. And I think that is very analogous to our job seekers who are neurodiverse. They might look and sound in some regards just like everybody else, but they don't come across as needing it. And so why are they getting it? So let's amplify the idea that it's not favoritism. I'm not doing anybody any favors. I'm helping everyone. And I just wanted to throw out for the group in general that there is a wonderful partnership that we at RIT have with a company called Optimize, and they provide online training modules for coworkers, Neurodiversity 101. And having been in this field for a long time, I'm rather judgmental about what kind of trainings I would give to people that I'm trying to inspire in this work. And this is one that I would wholeheartedly advocate. So they have a multitude, but the ones that we use, they have a Neurodiversity 101 for coworkers. They have one specifically designed for hiring managers, one for HR people, and one for supervisors. And I would love to follow up with anybody that's interested for their workplace, because it is a great foundation setting to help bridge that gap and to remove this concept that we're favoring someone. No, we're just creating an inclusive workplace that betters the experience for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of go back to a kind of cliche statement that we use in the leadership development business, and I'm sure everyone else has heard it. But there's the golden rule, which is treat others as you would treat yourself. But really, the platinum rule, which is more precious and more valuable, is treat others as they want to be treated. And of course, the span of that is tremendous, right? Because it's very easy to know how we would like to be treated. It's very difficult to understand how they want to be treated. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes relationship, it takes emotion, it takes vulnerability. I mean, we could go on with the words, right? But we have to invest to make sure that everyone feels really included. And we have to have the motivation to do that. We have to have the support to do that. And in a certain sense, we have to have the recognition. We have to buoy each other up, right? We have to recognize when we see somebody in our workplace or in our businesses that are doing it right, help them celebrate that, because it's a hard job.
Following on that, I think I want to say, learn the phrase to be most successful from whichever side you're coming at it from. So we talk a lot, especially when I talk with students, about self-disclosure, and you don't have to disclose anything to say, to get the best out of me or to be my most successful, I need. And if you're an employer, you don't have to say, hey, what's your diagnosis? You can say, what can I do to help you be more successful? And that applies to the interview, that applies to work. And that allows you to find out what they do need, and not to try and do a one size fits all. But what do you need to be most successful? And to be most successful, I need. And count to 7.
My closing thoughts on this is I just wanted to say thank you this was very educational for myself. Being a startup, hearing these stories, listening, learning, being open to knowing that people learn in different ways. And I guess for my closing thought, I think just making sure that you are open to communications and open to communications with captions.
No commercials, no commercials. Well, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank our panelists. If you would like to learn more about a panelist inside of your brochure, there's information. There's also, are you still set up out in the hall? No, I'm lying. Either way, all the information for the panelists can be found in your guide. Thank you very much, and I hope you continue to enjoy the conference. I'm LaToya Price. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you, LaToya.
Hi, I am Dawn Marie Solis with INAS 2022 Neurodiversity Conference, and I am here with Doctors Mary Doherty and Sebastian Shaw. They are part of an organization that I was so thrilled to discover. It is Autistic Doctors International, and it is representative of actually autistic people in the medical field. They have more than 500 participants around the world. They do amazing support work and research work. They have a little spin-off for autistic medical students. I'm just thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to these two individuals who are doing so much good, real connected research and support for the autistic community as it relates to the medical field. So Mary and Sebastian, thank you so much. Please feel free to let everybody know a little bit about you, how the organization started, what you're doing, your research, anything you want to share.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great to be here. Great to be a part of this. ADI started back in 2018. Sorry, no, let me start that again. ADI started back in 2019, in April, on the 1st of April. It's quite funny, although that wasn't by design. And we started because I had realized that I was autistic back in 2013, and I'm a doctor. I'm an anesthetist. That's my background. And I just needed to connect with my professional peers. I knew that I wasn't, well, I was, initially I thought I was the only one.